The elements were raging in the sky. Lightning bolts cut through the sky, accompanied by a roar. The downpour scared all the passers-by. The windows of the establishment were lit up. A broad-shouldered man stood with his back to the action, holding a huge kitchen knife up, ready to do something. Someone apologized and turned to the chef. The worker lowered the tool and cut off the fish's head. The girl timidly asked for a raise this month. The boss replied that she had already received that last month. But the employee continued to ask, reminding him about the moon, but was interrupted. The boss didn't want to listen to her anymore. The worker looked at the boss pleadingly. The man said that every time he talked about her daughter, tears came to his eyes. He reproached her husband for cheating on him and felt sorry for her sick daughter. The girl corrected him, smiling that her husband had been faithful to her, but she herself thought that the boss had been too emotional. The boss took a deep breath and promised a raise. But he warned that this was the last time he was doing this. Sincere words of gratitude followed. The heroine put her hand on her heart. She felt relieved. Now there should be enough for medicine. The boss asked the girl not to forget about herself, no matter what happened. He believed that a healthy psyche was the key to family happiness. The girl thought that money was needed for happiness. Approaching the door, he almost opened it. She said goodbye, looking over her shoulder. The boss was surprised that she was going to go looking like that. He urged the employee to take a look at herself. The blonde thought that she didn't have the strength for this, but she remembered that she could have accidentally met Max. She said out loud that she would go and change her clothes, and pointing with her finger in the direction of the utility room, she quickly went there. That evening, on the way home, our heroine was mercilessly poured with rain. The windows in the houses were glowing with a soft light, and she too was eager to get home and be warm as soon as possible. But then she saw a guy lying on the road. His muscular body was dressed in a snow-white shirt, and a cut wound was bleeding on his side. The girl wondered why he was there, but then she noticed the blood and understood everything. The blonde came closer. She began to shake the stranger, asking if the guy was okay. The young man mumbled something inarticulately. Opening his eyes with difficulty, he focused on the silhouette of a pretty blonde. But he saw her differently. The stranger grabbed the girl's wrist tightly, which scared her quite a bit. Through clenched teeth, he began to beg her not to leave him, and the rain continued to pour. After a while, our heroine, all wet, was at home. She, panting heavily, helped the stranger enter her apartment. As the guy passed the table, a note fell from his pocket onto the floor. In it, a certain Max congratulated him on his birthday in advance and arranged a meeting in the morning. The girl laid the guest on the bed. Having looked at the stranger, she began to reproach herself. The young man winced in pain. The blonde assured herself that she simply could not leave him wounded on the street. And there was also a request not to leave. The savior unbuttoned her shirt, snapping buttons. She involuntarily shuddered at what she saw. There was a deep, bleeding cut wound on the young man's side. The worried rescuer wanted to call an ambulance, as she did not want the victim to die. Opening the phone, she wanted to help him. At that time, the wounded man woke up and thought about something completely different. He was imagining things. He took the girl's wrist and began to press her to himself. The blonde was not the one he thought. She began to wriggle and struggle to free herself. The wounded man began to squeeze her harder. The girl's phone began to vibrate, but she did not react. Unable to control herself, she continued to look into the brunette's eyes. The drugged blonde didn't understand what was happening. There was fear in her eyes. She dropped the phone and realized that she couldn't control herself. The young man began to touch her hair and tuck it behind her ears. The savior found the injured man attractive. Our heroine wanted to be closer to the young man. She had passion. She stroked her guest's ears. Olivia received messages from an unknown person on her phone with congratulations. She decided to kiss the young man in a state of some kind of trance. The subscriber wished her to be delighted with the day. At the same time, sitting on the wounded man, our heroine kissed and was embarrassed. Both were very pleased. It was raining outside. The houses of the residential area looked gloomy and terrifying. Behind the window glass of one of the apartments, a couple continued to kiss passionately. The guy caressed his partner, lifting her shirt on her back. The excessive force caused the fabric of the clothing to tear, but the surge of tender feelings did not allow them to separate. Both partners were in the grip of passion. A bullet fell out of the young man's bloody wound onto the floor with a metallic clang. He had previously been injured in a shootout with strangers. Suddenly, the boy heard a voice in his head. He began to remember how a man came into the room, saying that Julia's killer was in front of him. He turned sharply and nervously towards the boy who was lying with his head covered in the bed. Julia seemed to be there. She looked gloomy. Having suddenly realized where he was, the brunette began to turn his head from side to side in confusion about what had happened. He began to sort through his thoughts in his head, remembering where he was and what had happened. After refreshing his memory, he began to recall that after the meeting in the evening he was driving home. Then, on the wet road, there was almost an accident. Brakes squealed sickeningly. Cars honked. Drivers yelled rude words at each other. The young man suddenly saw Julia's ghostly silhouette through the car window. He was amazed and decided to follow her. In a gateway, the brunette met a crowd of hooligans who attacked him. He was strong and fought back well. Then the coward pointed his gun at the unarmed man. The guy clenched his teeth and got a bullet in his side. He clearly remembered the loud sound of the shot and the bleeding wound on his body. He remembered how he fell down on the road, exhausted. And now he was looking for the damage in his body, feeling his side. But it had magically disappeared. The guy turned his head in different directions, looking around to see where he was now. And then he started sniffing the girl. He didn't remember how he came. And he also couldn't understand why the stranger looked so much like Julia. The blonde started to deny it. She asked fearfully to wait and stop. She assured that she didn't want to do it. The young man got really furious. He grabbed her, threw her on her back, and loomed over her menacingly. He demanded to know immediately who she was. He also angrily asked why she had brought him here. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. There were photos on the table, of desert sand. On the other, it seemed, were two old friends, a soldier and a photojournalist. The journalist's badge was also lying there. The young man was taking a shower. His muscular, strong legs were all covered with deep old scars. He wondered out loud if Olivia had returned home. The redhead rubbed his neck, thinking. The young man was washing the soap off himself under streams of hot water. Then his name was called. Max opened the door and asked the girl's name if it was she who had come. The voice calling came from her room. Having broken the door handle, the guy, driven by anxiety, burst into her room. Olivia was screaming something incoherently. She looked scared. It was clear that something was bothering the girl in the living room. Max ran there with a towel on his hips. The girl was hiding behind his back. Opening the door, the young man asked what had happened there. Things were scattered. The chair was overturned. A gust of wind blew through the open window, fluttering the curtains. Olivia herself could not believe what she saw. It seemed that her guest had simply disappeared. The window was wide open. The wind was blowing through the shutters. The white curtain was billowing. It was raining outside and the room was in disarray. The girl stopped, looking at the mess, and suddenly thought, perhaps she had just dreamed all this. She slowly turned to the sofa and saw a dark stain on the upholstery. Blood. His blood, not a mirage. A voice came from behind. Max looked with alarm, noticing the blood and suspecting that she might have been injured. Her face turned pale. The girl waved her hands sharply, trying to force a smile, attributing everything to fright from the gust of wind. Panic was growing inside her. If the police found out, she would have to miss her shift, and she had just gotten a raise. The man frowned, asking again about the wind, as if he doubted her words. She nodded without flinching, confirming the previous version. Her shoulders hunched in on herself. He fell silent. His gaze became thoughtful, as if Max was trying to put together the pieces of a strange mosaic. Looking around the room, he noticed how things were scattered. He mentally noted that the wind could not have turned everything upside down like that. Suspicion flashed in his eyes. The man looked at her sullenly, as if he was about to ask an important question. But he kept silent, thinking that it was none of his business. They didn't even have any relationship. Max turned to the exit, telling her to let him know if anything happened. Olivia thanked him politely, pretending to be calm, hiding her excitement behind an even intonation. Max scratched the back of his head, embarrassed by the situation, and muttered something as he walked out into the corridor. She sank down onto the sofa, exhaling heavily, as if she had lifted a weight from her shoulders. Her eyes were fixed on the ceiling. The sky outside the window was black, but her thoughts were even darker. Reaching out, Olivia saw a bullet between her fingers. Smooth, cold as the night itself. This is the same bullet that probably came out of the stranger's wound, proof that everything was real. She tried to believe that a man with such blood loss could escape through the window, and her thoughts revolved around one thing: who he really was. And why was he here? The bullet glittered in her hand as moonlight filtered into the room through the fluttering curtains. The tall towers were drowning in darkness. The glass windows reflected the lights of the night city. In a luxurious room sat a half-naked man. He was wearing black slippers and pants, his shirt lying next to him. He was sitting on the bed in a spacious and stylish bedroom surrounded by cold silence. Having tied his arm above the elbow with a tourniquet, he injected himself with a bright red liquid using a syringe. The substance in the ampoule pulsed as the boy pushed the injection needle deeper into his vein. His face was distorted with pain. The muscles of his entire body tensed, his eyebrows furrowed in a frown. Suddenly the door swung open and a man in a formal black suit burst into the room. He stepped inside, addressing the man sitting on the bed by name. It was clear from his voice that he was annoyed. The blue-eyed blonde demanded an explanation with clenched fists, his face expressing anger. He noticed blood on the boy's body, dark stains showing through the fabric of his pants. Damien reluctantly admitted that he had been shot by some bastards in an alley. The man frowned. How did he end up in such a place? The answer was simple: hallucinations. Getting out of bed, Damien lifted his shirt, showing the wound and the frowning face. The man exploded, reminding him of the doctor's warning. Overdose makes the pain worse. Damien turned around sharply, putting on his shirt, trying not to look at his interlocutor. The blonde quietly added that with a small dosage, the man could live like an ordinary person. But he went up to the flask and, smiling, took a new portion of the liquid. He noted with mockery that the other man sounded just like a doctor. The blonde replied that he couldn't help it. After all, he was watching the one who created it himself. But the creator himself, apparently, was in terrible condition. Daniel's hand was suddenly covered in thick fur, his fingers stretched out into claws. He looked at Russell tensely, recognizing where this was going. He knew how dangerous they both were, and there was no point in hiding it any longer. A second later, he had already transformed into a massive werewolf with glowing golden eyes. He said that humans and werewolves could never live together. And the reason for their freedom is a drug called an instinct suppressor. The substance was based on wolfsbane. Once lethal, now a deterrent. Father reworked it, creating a formula capable of suppressing the beast within. Subsequently, new versions were developed, including in tablet form, and the pharmaceutical company Terracure was born. But suddenly the man felt ill. He fell, leaning against the edge of the table. The cup slipped out of his hands, smashing on the floor with a sharp ringing sound. The drug's side effects were too much, even for him. Daniel remembered kissing the woman, and in that moment the pain had gone away. It was as if his body had returned to the time when he had not yet taken the drugs. The image of him holding a scrap of blue shirt appeared before his eyes again. Turning to Russell, Daniel ordered him to find the owner of this thing. It could help improve the cure. The man was surprised but agreed if he was so sure. He asked what to do with him, hinting at the third participant. The basement was lit up with neon lights and a Begame sign at the entrance. Inside, the club was bustling with life. The crowd was dancing, drinking, laughing to the pounding music. A man in a black cloak walked through the chaos, not paying attention to anyone. He walked down a long corridor, his boots thumping dully on the floor. At the end of the corridor, the stranger stopped in front of the door and swung it open. Inside was a cramped room, with a sofa in the middle and a table with food and drink. Several men and women were having fun. Some were smoking, some were kissing. A man was lounging on the sofa, sipping beer, his shirt unbuttoned. The stranger approached him, expressing his anger without further ado. He punched him hard, spilling beer and freezing the room. Panic overtook everyone. The girls screamed and ran out in horror along with the other guys. The man in the cloak stood with a gloomy face, his eyes sparkling with different lights. The blonde man stood up, wiping the blood from his face with the back of his hand. He glanced sideways. It was Silos. The man stood over Silos. His voice was cold. It was a reminder of family and betrayal. Now the blonde man would lead the clan. Silos raised his head. He asked why there was such a rush. He reproached Turner for his obsession and desire for revenge, as if this were his personal war. Turner clenched his fist. His face tightened. Silas's words had hurt him. Everything inside him was seething, but he tried to control himself. The man said that he believed in Silos's power. He thought that he was a wolf, but he was wrong. In front of him was a puppy who had not yet tasted blood. The blonde felt uncomfortable. His fingers tightened on the glass. The glass cracked. Anger flared in his eyes. His face became gloomy and dangerous. He reached out for Turner, grabbed him, and pinned him to the table. His fingers closed around his neck. Anger exploded. The room shook. Everything shattered. The dishes crashed to the floor. The food was scattered. Turner was choking, but he didn't try to free himself. He just looked into the eyes. With difficulty, he squeezed out the words. The man got exactly the reaction he was hoping for. That's why he chose him. Silos continued to strangle him. His hands tightened. The man in the cloak wheezed but still said it was time to go. The time had come. Turner raised his head, a smile appearing on his face. He said that they had too much work ahead of them to waste energy on arguing. It was evening outside. A sign at the entrance was shining. The name of the cafe was glowing in red letters. A large moon was painted above it. Olivia was changing. She answered the call. The voice was calm. The girl said that she was at work and would be free soon. She looked at the locker. There were pictures pinned up there. One of her with a child. Another of her with a man she was hugging. Minson was sitting on the bed. A girl was sleeping next to her. The girl said that the little girl had been capricious, but now she had calmed down and was fast asleep. Olivia put on a white shirt. She remembered that she had accidentally torn it. It was someone else's thing and she felt awkward. Minson was surprised on the phone. Her voice became louder. She reminded him how much that shirt cost and it didn't sound like a joke. Olivia started buttoning her shirt. The girl apologized. She promised to buy a new one. Minson was still in shock. Her friend interrupted her. She suggested that Max was involved in this story. Her voice became more mocking. Olivia blushed. She asked again, not understanding what he was talking about. Her cheeks flushed. Her voice trembled with embarrassment. Minson said there was definitely something going on between them. She thought they should have been together a long time ago. She had no doubt about it. Olivia objected. The girl said that there was nothing between them. Her voice was sharp, but there was uncertainty in it. Minson chuckled softly. She seemed to not believe it, but she said nothing more. The girl said goodbye. They parted on a calm note. Olivia hung up. She sighed. Her thoughts returned to the conversation. Her face became thoughtful. She reached for her bag. Her things were in the locker. Her fingers felt something in her pocket. The girl took it out. She had a bullet in her hand. The very same one. It lay in her fingers. Heavy, shiny, familiar, and alien at the same time. Olivia looked closer. The bullet was golden. The light played beautifully on its surface. Her thoughts carried her far away. The girl remembered how she lay on top of a stranger. How his strong hands held her, lifting her shirt. Then the kiss came. The memory washed over her. It was as if her heart was beating faster. She held her breath. The locker slammed shut. Olivia clutched the door with her hand. Her other hand covered her mouth. She tried to stop herself. There was only one thing in my head. Enough. All this needs to be forgotten. It was a mistake. Just an accident that won't happen again. The door to the cafe opened. 2 people came in. One was reserved, the other tense. They were Turner and Silas. They walked in together. The atmosphere was quiet. Turner glanced at his companion and nodded toward the empty tables. The hall was empty. They looked around. There was no one. An ideal place for a conversation without prying ears. The men went deeper. They sat down on the sofa by the wall. Turner had a yellow folder in his hands. He put it on the table and held the folder closer to Silos. His gaze became serious. Everything was prepared. That was the first target on the list. Silos chuckled. His reaction showed that he wasn't taking this seriously. It all seemed like a formality to him. The man took the folder in his hands. He began to leaf through it. His attention slid over the photographs. His face remained calm. He asked if there would be any difficulties. A coldness flashed in his eyes. Silos wanted to know how well thought out it was. The answer was in the file. The subject was an orphan. Lived alone. No one would look for him. Only the body would be found when it was too late. Silos looked at the photo carefully. Young blonde, smiling. Former actor, military man, no family or friends. He asked how to use him. Wanted to understand why this particular person was chosen. His intuition told him, not just like that. Turner said it would be a true beta. Not a copy, not a mistake, but what should have been there all along. There was pride in his voice. He said the look on Silas's face was worth it, just to see his reaction fear. Silas was silent. The face of that werewolf floated before his eyes. Black eyes, a gigantic body. He was a monster. The werewolf was scary, not like the others. The power in it was frightening. This creature was uncontrollable, it was terrifying. Silos couldn't hold back. He slammed his fist on the table, his face twisted in rage. Anger burst forth. But the next second something changed. He caught a scent. Something in the air suddenly caught his attention. The man turned around. His gaze fell on the red door with the sign, "Staff Only." The smell was coming from there, familiar and alarming. He jumped up. Without hesitation, he walked forward. Turner tried to stop him, but he didn't even turn around. Silos swung the door open. It slammed against the wall. He stepped inside, not knowing what he would find on the other side. He saw the girl. She was standing half-turned, her eyes were green. Olivia looked at him with fear. The girl took a step back. Her face turned pale. Her voice trembled. She asked to leave. She said she would call the police. Silos didn't care. He walked forward. He came too close. His gaze became dark. The man pressed her against the cabinet. He put his hand on the door. He didn't let her move. He moved closer. His eyes slid to her neck. Silos breathed in her scent. It was familiar, too familiar. It smelled like Julia. His heart began to beat faster. He leaned closer. His breath touched her skin. The girl was scared. She pushed him away, screamed, tried to break free. And suddenly there was a sound. Something fell. It was a bullet, the same one she had been holding in her hand. The bullet rolled across the floor. Silos froze. The smell grew stronger. His eyes changed. He tasted blood, familiar, fresh. Everything inside him flared. The man stepped back. He covered his face with his hand. The veins in his neck bulged. His body shook. He was starting to break from the inside. His face became distorted. He was choking. He couldn't control himself. His heart was pounding. Everything was getting out of control. Turner burst into the room. His voice was loud. He was calling for Silos, trying to reach his consciousness. Turner ran up, grabbed Silas by the shoulder, said convincingly that the girl was not their target. Things had already gone too far, but it was too late. Silos's gaze changed. His ears became sharper. His eyes turned a bestial yellow. Turner cursed. He realized he hadn't made it in time. He had been too slow. It had all happened too fast. He pulled a gun from under his cloak. The pistol flashed in his hand. The barrel was aimed at Silos's head. This was the only way out. The girl was shocked. She stood aside. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't. Everything inside her was frozen with fear. A shot rang out, loud, sharp. A splash of blood. The body jerked. The moment became an eternity. Olivia's face was splattered with blood. Her eyes flew open. Everything inside her collapsed. She didn't understand what was happening. Shock paralyzed her. The girl looked straight ahead, and only then did she scream. From horror, from pain, from fear. Olivia sat down on the floor. A scream escaped her. A trembling hand covered her mouth. The carpet, the sofa, the floor. Everything was splattered with blood. Silos collapsed next to him, exhausted. He was on his knees, covered in blood. His eyes were empty. The whole scene seemed frozen in time. The girl tried to speak. The words were confused. Her lips were trembling. Her green eyes looked with horror at his lifeless body. She looked up. The voice grew a little louder. Her lips whispered that he was no longer breathing. It was over. Olivia began to back away. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. The silhouette of Turner approaching appeared in the corner of her vision. He reached for his cloak. His movements were unhurried. His face was expressionless. This only increased the girl's fear. The man took a white cloth out of his cloak pocket. He stepped forward slowly. She pressed herself against the closet. Fear was frozen in her eyes. The rag was right next to her face. He covered her mouth. The girl twitched and moaned, almost losing consciousness from horror. Suddenly a voice rang out. Someone was calling her name. The sharp call brought Olivia back to reality. She jumped up. She was sweating and panicking. Her eyes were wide open. Her fingers were still shaking. She covered her mouth, breathing heavily. The boss burst into the room. He was stunned by her appearance. He asked what had happened. She stood there as if in a fog. The girl pointed to the side. Her voice broke. She stuttered, barely able to say that someone had shot right here. The man frowned. He asked what exactly the girl had said. His voice was calm, and she suddenly froze as if she had realized something. Olivia looked back. There was nothing where she pointed. The room was clean, no marks or blood. The girl whispered that she saw traces on the locker, on the floor, everywhere. There was blood. She could have sworn. But now everything was gone. Olivia put her hand to her temple. Her forehead was sweating. Her headache was growing, as if her mind couldn't cope with reality. The boss calmly said that it might be a migraine. Not enough sleep. Time to go down and help with the work. Olivia was left alone. Her thoughts were spinning, not giving her peace. She still couldn't understand where the dream ended. If it was just a dream, then why did everything inside hurt so much? Why did it all seem so real? The man's face appeared before my eyes again. The blonde hair. His body, which was turning into something frightening and inhuman. There was a cross on the wall. The light was dim. Silence reigned inside the church. The air smelled of wax and prayers. The nun was setting out candles. The priest stood by the window. His gaze was thoughtful. He held a shiny object in his fingers. It was a bullet, the very same one. He looked at her, thinking. Damian Brown's name kept ringing in his head. The rumors about his condition were true. Someone had finally decided to take the shot. He himself hadn't believed it was possible. Hidden in the clerical vestments was the man himself, Turner. Beneath the calm exterior, thoughts of failure and consequences were seething. Everything could have gone differently. He remembered standing there at night with a shovel. Cold wind. The ground crunched under his feet. Sand fell on his body. He was finishing the job. He was burying Silas. Everything was supposed to be gone. But one question remained. Who was the woman and how was she connected to Brown? Turner was distracted from his thoughts. Someone spoke to him. The voice brought him out of his stupor. The Holy Father hid the bullet in the pocket of his black shirt. He turned to the newcomers, trying to look calm. 2 people entered the room. One with a backpack, the other in a black sweater. The second said that he was going to take part in the play. The guy wanted to invite the Holy Father. His friend wrote the script and he would play the lead role. There was enthusiasm in his eyes. Max introduced himself. He was polite. He said that the sermon had made an impression. His voice sounded sincere but reserved. Andreas explained that he met Max abroad. Max added that he used to be a war correspondent. He was a reporter now. He spoke with a slight smile. There was a weariness in his voice, as if he had seen too much. The priest shook Max's hand. He asked what area he covered. The question sounded almost formal. Max replied that he was writing about the stars for now. But he dreamed of taking on serious topics. He scratched his head, embarrassed. Andreas reminded him of Saturday. He asked if the Holy Father was free. He briefly apologized, saying that he was busy. The boy sighed with disappointment. He wanted to reserve a VIP seat. He hoped the priest would come another time. He patted Max on the shoulder. It was a sign. It was time to go. They turned to the exit. The mood was light. Andreas chuckled. He remembered the girl Max was having an affair with. There was a joke in his tone. Max tensed up. He insisted that there was nothing between them. Just friendship. Only mutual wishes for happiness. The Holy Father followed them with a glance from under his glasses. His face was calm, but his eyes glittered suspiciously. He listened to the conversation. His attention was focused on Max. Something about the man made him uneasy. Andreas joked again. His words sounded defiant. He was talking about what priests do. The laughter was awkward. They both laughed. The sound echoed through the church. But the Holy Father was not smiling. Evening came. It was getting dark outside. Lights came on in the windows of the houses. A starry sky stretched out over the city. Olivia was sitting at home with Minson and their daughter. Minson asked if it was true that she was going out on Saturday. The girl was sitting on the floor. A yellow backpack lay at her feet. She was silently rearranging her things as if getting ready for a trip. Minson called her name. But Olivia didn't answer. She was lost in thought. Her thoughts were taking her further and further. Too many oddities. Too many coincidences. It all started with a moment that felt like a dream. Then there was a nightmare. It felt like reality. Her pulse quickened as she tried to remember which of these things were true. Minson couldn't take it anymore. Her voice broke. She screamed, causing Olivia to flinch and snap back to reality. The friend turned to Luna. The girl was in her arms. She asked if Max had asked Olivia out on a date. Luna looked at her mother and asked in a barely audible voice about a date. But the word came out unintelligible. Only Svidani came out. Olivia stood up. She held out her hands to her daughter. Her voice was gentle. The girl tried to explain that this was not a date at all. Minson didn't let him finish. She turned around with the baby in her arms and left. She said it was time to pick out an outfit. Her voice sounded decisive. Olivia thought about it. Her face became serious. She whispered in her mind that she never listened. The girl exhaled. It flashed through her mind that maybe this would be good for her. Maybe she should give herself a little freedom. Minson held out a red dress. It shone on the hanger. The dress looked luxurious, too spectacular. Olivia waved her hand. Her face flushed. The dress seemed too provocative to her. Minson raised her voice, said that this too much was exactly what was needed to finally reach a new level. The friend moved closer. There was curiosity in her eyes. She wanted to know what Olivia really thought about Max. The girl blushed. Her cheeks flushed. Her gaze dropped down. She tried to say something, but her tongue was slurred. Minson continued to insist. She suggested that she simply imagined that she wanted to kiss him. There was a playful note in his voice. An image immediately appeared in Olivia's mind. Max standing in front of her, half naked, serious, silent, and for some reason very close. She was wearing a red dress. Her hair was loose. The light fell softly. Max slowly stretched out his hand, touching her curls. Her breathing quickened. In this fantasy, Max was reaching closer. His fingers were sliding along her cheek. Her heart was beating in her temples. He gently took her chin. His face was very close. There was tenderness and desire in his eyes. And then their lips touched. The kiss was slow, warm. It seemed to melt all the ice inside. Olivia suddenly came back to reality. Her cheeks flushed. She covered her mouth with her hand. Her thoughts swirled. She looked down. A strange feeling stirred inside her. She admitted to herself that maybe this wasn't such a bad idea. Morning came. The high-rise building reflected the first rays of the sun. The sky was blue. The air seemed transparent. 2 men were sitting on the couch. One of them was Max. He was looking around the room. His face was focused. There was a man sitting on the chair in front of them. It was Damian Brown. Max recognized him from the photo in the file. The chair was simple. It didn't match the status. The owner's name was on the table. Everything looked too calm. Max turned his gaze to Brown. He studied him. He tried to understand who this man was and what was behind his name. A man with expressive features, white shirt and black trousers. He looked stern, golden eyes, hair styled, facial features flawless, muscles tense, radiated confidence and strength. The room was tense. Everything inside froze. An important conversation was coming, one that could change a lot. Damian Brown, a pharmaceutical magnate, came out of nowhere and quickly became the most talked about person in the news. Some called him the company president's favorite son. Others whispered that he was the lover of a high-ranking official. In recent months, headlines have been filled with rumors of his addiction and the rare disease that was destroying him from the inside. This disease attracted the attention of Terracure, which began to make money on drugs for unusual conditions. Max ran his hand over his forehead. Now he understood why his editor was so fixated on this company. He remembered his boss yelling at him to get all the dirt out. Women, drugs, anything that could be incriminating. Max thought the real target was the company, not the personal lives of its participants. But there was no point in arguing. The secretary called his name. Max came out of his thoughts and asked a question. What was the main topic of the conference? The secretary started to answer, but the guy interrupted him. Max turned to Mr. Brown and said that it would be better if he said it himself. The guy added that no one knows the topic of drugs as well as the chairman himself. Damian looked at him. His voice was cold. He asked, "What kind of medicine exactly did he mean?" His golden eyes lit up. Something strange flashed in them. Max noticed it and tensed. He was sweating. His thoughts were confused. Inside there was a growing feeling that Mr. Brown was much smarter than he seemed. Suddenly Damian stood up. His voice became final. He decided to end the meeting. Max tried to stop him. He held out his hand. He said that he has a couple more questions. The secretary came closer, offered to show him the way. Max thought that he needed to get attention urgently. He called the chairman by name. Damian turned around. His gaze was heavy. Max tensed. The secretary intervened again. He warned that personal questions were unacceptable. But the guy didn't stop. He asked what had been of interest to Damian lately. Wanted to get him emotional. The secretary tried to intervene again. But Max added that it was important for readers to know who runs the company. Damien didn't like it. His face twisted. His hand went to his temple. He gritted his teeth. His head hurt more. He looked at Max angrily. His eyes flashed coldly. Max was embarrassed. He apologized. He tried to smooth things over, but it was all useless. Damien was furious. The words were harsh. He told him to leave and never come back. The secretary took Max by the arm. She led him to the exit. He turned around to say goodbye. His gaze was attentive. He wondered if the rumors were true. Maybe Mr. Brown really was sick, or something worse. In the office, Damien leaned against the table. His face had turned pale. He was barely holding on. His gaze had become cloudy. Evening. A large black car stopped at a residential building. The windows were tinted. A man came out of it. He was talking on the phone. He said that he was standing in front of her house. The conversation was with Damien. It was Russell. He held a piece of blue cloth in his hand. He brought it to his nose. He recognized the smell. Damien ordered them to hurry over the phone. Russell nodded and started looking for the right floor. He knocked on one of the doors. A girl looked out from behind it. It was Olivia's friend. He didn't wait. He abruptly opened the door. The girl screamed. She flew straight into the guy's arms. Russell brought the cloth to his face again. He inhaled the scent. He hesitated. Something was wrong. He noted in his mind, the smell was hers, but her appearance did not match the description. Damien mentioned the blonde. Minson took a step back and asked sharply why he was sniffing her. Her voice broke with indignation. Russell turned to the man next to him. It was John. He said there might have been a mistake. It was time to go. The men left. Minson called after them. Her voice was agitated. She demanded an explanation. The girl remained in the doorway. Thoughts were seething inside her. The question did not leave her. What just happened? Minson ran her hand over her face, exhaled heavily and thought, the world is definitely going crazy. Meanwhile, Max stood in front of the door. He was dressed up, but inside he felt uneasy. Tommy's words wouldn't leave his head. Olivia opened the door. Max smiled but froze. She was dazzlingly beautiful in a red dress. The girl greeted him. Her voice was soft. He couldn't take his eyes off her. His heart started beating faster. The dress perfectly emphasized her figure. It sat on her like a glove. She sheepishly asked if it looked okay. Max replied that it looked great. He told her to wear it more often. Olivia turned away. Her gaze fell on the window. The rain was making noise outside the glass. It became strangely uneasy inside. He turned, promising to take the umbrella. Her eyes slid over the drops. That night came to mind. A wounded man appeared before her eyes. He called her Julia. His voice was weak, almost pleading. A girl in a white dress was running across the grass. Someone was calling Julia, reaching out to her through the light. Silos grabbed her hand. His voice was broken. He was asking her to stay. His eyes were shining with fear and hope. He looked, and in front of him was no longer Julia, but Olivia, the girl from the cafe. His gaze changed. Blue eyes opened. They glowed. A hand shot up out of the ground. Through the wet mud, someone grabbed him tightly, helped him get out. The ground crumbled. It was a man in a black cloak. He picked it up. His voice was mocking. The evening was dark and cold. Silos's gaze darkened. His eyes flashed with malice. There was dried blood on his clothes. He hissed that the dream was disgusting. On the shelf stood rows of bottles with different alcoholic drinks: wine, champagne, brandy, whiskey, martini, rum, for every taste and budget. 2 customers were sitting at the bar. Max was asking for forgiveness for what had happened. His interlocutor was asking what had happened to his friend. The interlocutor could not say for sure. After all, he never missed performances without a reason. Half an hour ago, a guy stood at the theater box office with a confused expression on his face. It turned out that the performance was canceled due to the absence of the leading actor. Tommy didn't show up for some unknown reason, but his friend was calm, and he assumed that he simply fell asleep on the way here and overslept his stop. Max said that this happened for the first time in New York when a meeting was scheduled. That day, the guy was very late. The guys had known each other for a long time. Max was a war correspondent at the time, and he didn't immediately realize that there was a soldier in front of him. After all, Tommy was acting pretty stupid. The girl asked how he ended up here. Her interlocutor did not get along with his father as a child. That is why he left home when he was still a schoolboy. As a child, Max took on any job and ended up here. His family had no idea where their son was now or what he was doing. The blonde voiced her understanding and thoughtfully looked away. The guy assumed that he had tired his beautiful interlocutor with talk about himself. He asked the girl how her youth had been. Her parents had died when she was still a child. At that moment, the girl wanted most of all to grow up in order to create her own family. And that's why I felt so happy when I met my husband. The young man also wanted to start a family. After that, our heroine stopped feeling lonely. Then the moon was born. The guy proposed to his beloved and went to work to provide for his family. But 8 months later, seeing him again, the beloved was buried deep underground. The pregnant girl stood at the grave dressed in mourning. Her daughter was born prematurely. She was capricious and sickly from birth. Doctors could not explain the nature of what was happening to the child. However, the mother knew that the reason was in herself. Luna came into the world filled with her bitterness and despair. The blonde was lying on the damp ground. His neck and shoulder were covered in blood. A beast with a clawed paw stood next to him. The brunette was quickly approaching the place. He loudly called out Silos's name. The white wolf looked at him with a challenge in his blue eyes and growled deep in his throat. His fanged mouth was smeared with the blood of his victim. The predator stepped over the still warm body of the victim, and with smooth, careful, stealthy movements, he moved towards the uninvited guest. But suddenly, pushing off from the ground, the beast decisively made a big leap forward. It was as if inevitable death was rushing towards him. The man commanded Silos to stop in a commanding voice. His teeth were already undergoing a transformation into predatory fangs. A second later, 2 wolves clashed in a brutal duel. The dark animals' eyes were different colors. They hit each other with their sides and flew off. But then, jumping to their feet, the animals began to circle, keeping an eye on the enemy at some distance. The white wolf said that the man was already dead, and he asked what to do now. The friend asked Silas to calm down. He assured him that it was worth waiting 3 days. If someone else had heard their conversation, it would have been a roar of different timbre. Billy said he was fed up with biblical nonsense. The interlocutor said that it would take 3 days to deliver the body to the morgue. This will make it easier to access it. After all, the dead man turned into a werewolf on the 3rd day. Silos found this fact quite fascinating. He looked up and asked if the assistant had recognized who the woman from the cafe was. The dark wolf answered negatively. He asked to wait, promising that all the information would come later. The atmosphere was heating up. There was very little time. Silos kept thinking about that person, and it drove him crazy. And now he was flashing his blue eyes and baring his predatory jaws. Soft light created a cozy atmosphere. Our heroine and Max were sitting in a public place. The girl was drinking red wine. The girl sipped the noble grape drink and asked herself why she suddenly remembered her husband. This made her feel rather awkward. Suddenly, looking at her hand, she realized that she had forgotten to take off her engagement ring before leaving the house. Max called out his interlocutor's name and said that she had drops of wine on her face. The girl began to ask where and wipe inappropriately. A friend asked permission to help her. Soon he assured that everything was ready. Olivia blushed shyly, embarrassed by such a situation. Green eyes looked up at Max. Hearts were going off the scale, working furiously, accelerating their pulsation. Something unimaginable was happening. The girl interrupted me and turned away. Stuttering a little from embarrassment, she asked if it wasn't time for them to go home already. The guy looked at Olivia with anxious tenderness. He said that he sincerely wanted her and Luna to be happy. Max covered his interlocutor's hand with his own and asked her to do as she thought necessary. He believed that Olivia deserved it. Our heroine thought deeply. She asked herself if she deserved happiness, and she decided that she did. Olivia brought her face closer to the guy and gently kissed him on the cheek. At that moment, she wanted to do what her heart told her to do. Their lips met in a kiss. It was warm, deep. Max held her head tightly and Olivia gently placed her hand on his shoulder. The kiss became bolder. Their breathing quickened, their bodies pressed closer. A hot spark flared up inside. The girl stepped back, breathing heavily. Her lips were trembling, her eyes were shining. Her gaze showed anxiety and a desire to stop. Max took her hand. His palm was warm. Olivia whispered words that sounded impatient and slightly impudent. She said she wasn't here. She smiled slightly and looked away. She already had room in her head to continue. The couple headed to the bowling alley, where heavy balls rolled down the lane with a deafening roar. The girl proposed a bet. Whoever gets more points makes a wish. Max was surprised, but he couldn't resist. He agreed. Excitement flared up inside him. This night promised to be memorable. The boy showed her how to hold the ball. His hands were carefully wrapped around her wrists. She listened attentively, but the smile did not leave her face. Olivia took the first throw. The ball rolled down the lane. She held her breath and jumped for joy, almost a strike. They clapped their hands, laughed, encouraged each other. The tension gave way to joy. They drank beer together. They clinked cans. Everything seemed easy. Everything seemed real. Max threw a strike. He raised his hands and looked at her triumphantly. Olivia snorted but laughed. The next throw was hers. She braced herself, took aim. Strike! She squealed happily. They high-fived. Sparks were flying between them. Everything was coming to an end. Olivia sat down on the sofa in a short white skirt. She sighed. Her cheeks were burning and her breathing was ragged. Max knelt down in front of her. He carefully took off her sneakers and put on her shoes. His gesture was touching. Olivia looked at him with a slight smile and a raised eyebrow. She asked him if he had cheated her because he played too well. Max admitted that he was not a beginner, but he added that this was his first date at the bowling alley. Olivia raised her eyebrows. He threw his head back and laughed. His shirt was slightly open, his tie was slanted to the side. He looked impeccable. Olivia smiled. It was just as she had dreamed. Simple happiness through the noise of the rolling balls. Max finished putting her shoes on. His fingers lingered briefly at her ankle. He looked at her with admiration. The girl froze, thoughtful. Something in his gaze warmed her from within. She slowly leaned closer. Her hair fell forward. She asked in a whisper what his wish would be. Her lips trembled with anticipation. Max was still kneeling. She looked down at him, eye to eye. The air between them thickened. He stood up. Their faces were dangerously close. The guy leaned a little closer and asked a counter-question. Max brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was gentle. Olivia closed her eyes, holding her breath. They found themselves at the hotel door. Their lips met in a kiss. He held her tightly but gently. She responded eagerly. Max threw off his jacket. The kisses became more passionate. He led her blindly until their hearts began to beat in unison. Max slowly pulled the strap of her red dress off her shoulder. The skin beneath his lips burned. She moaned, losing control more and more. The guy lifted her leg, raised her thigh. Olivia climbed on top of him, holding his neck. He suggested taking a shower together. The girl blushed, smiled nervously, didn't know what to answer. He whispered something, and soon they both collapsed on the bed. The guy's shirt was gone. Max was kissing her neck. His partner arched, gasping for breath from the sensations. He ran his hand over her face, hooked her hair. His gaze was soft but deep. The guy knew he wanted her. They embraced. Olivia was almost naked. Black lingerie shimmered in the soft light. He kissed her without stopping. A flash, a spark. There was no air between them, only breath, only hands, only lips. Suddenly the phone rang. It vibrated on the floor. The girl turned her head. On the screen is Minson. Everything froze. Only the trembling of their bodies and the call of reality remained in the room. Olivia and Max burst into the emergency room. The hospital's red sign glowed above the entrance, and the girl's voice was breaking with excitement. Panic and fear in every step. Our heroine ran up, shaking with fear. Minson was shaking and muttering. They were just eating cookies, when suddenly Luna became weak. The friend stood by the bed, almost screaming. Luna was lying on the sheets. The child was burning all over, breathing heavily and convulsively, clutching the sheet, as if fighting for every breath. The doctor came up from behind with a chart and calmly reported that Luna had taken her medicine and fallen asleep. His voice was reserved and quiet. He looked at the papers. This was the third incident this year. The attacks were becoming more frequent. His consciousness might not be able to withstand the next one. Olivia froze like a statue. The pupils of her green eyes narrowed, her face turned pale. It seemed as if the ground had slipped out from under her feet. The girl recoiled. Her legs buckled. Max caught her and managed to put his hand out. Olivia was on the verge of fainting. The guy tried to find hope. He asked if treatment abroad was possible. There should be at least some chance. The doctor shook his head. Without a diagnosis, no center will take on the case. There is no suitable method in the world. Max flushed. Anger crept into his voice. Did that mean there was still hope? The doctor remained calm. The disease is rare. Perhaps someone is already studying it. The guy couldn't stand it. He was annoyed by the formulaic answers. The girl is suffering and they tell him, "We hope." The Terracure office popped into my head. The press conference. The secretary's words about rare diseases. The journalist gently placed his hands on Olivia's shoulders. His gaze became sharp. He was not going to wait any longer. The guy leaned closer and said he had an idea, and suggested that they go together without wasting a second. The couple was driving somewhere. Max had a pass hanging around his neck. He was going to the conference and knew how to get inside. Olivia nodded. The company name sounded familiar. She remembered hearing about TerraCure somewhere. The guy reminded that the event was today. This was a chance. He was going to tell about Luna's illness. Max promised to be there and help. The girl whispered words of gratitude with difficulty. She was choked with guilt for everything that had happened. Bowling flashed before her eyes. Laughter. Joy. How could she laugh knowing that the child was ill? Tears flowed by themselves. The main character clenched her hands, bit her lip. Thoughts rushed about as if in a cage. The guy touched her hand. Silently. He didn't judge, he supported, he promised to find a solution. Olivia looked at him. There was gratitude and pain in her eyes. Everything was mixed up inside. The train was traveling along the night road. The girl was crying, pressing herself to her palms. Max held her by the shoulders, silently hugging her. Full moon. Forest. Olivia stands in the shade of the trees. The wind tangles her hair. She looks around, not understanding where she is. A howl erupts from behind. The sound is frightening, animalistic. The girl turns sharply, her breath catching. A wolf appears on the path. Its eyes sparkle in the darkness. Our heroine's body freezes. Her mind panics. Her legs carry her away. Her heart thunders in her ears. She doesn't realize why she's running. Her body decides for her. The wolf again. The silhouette is brighter. In her eyes is reflected a predator from whom it is impossible to hide. But the beast begins to change. Becomes a man. It's not just an image, it's someone familiar. The girl remembers. Damien, his face, his smell. He was lying on the floor calling her by another name. Suddenly everything disappears. Olivia wakes up, her head on Max's shoulder. The train is still moving. The girl straightens up abruptly. Max is asleep. His arms are crossed, his face is calm. He didn't notice anything. She touches her forehead. She is sweating. The dream was too real to be a dream. The thought catches my attention. Why him? Why again? That guy shows up too often to be a coincidence. The girl shakes her head. Enough. You need to pull yourself together. Panic won't help. The morning sun touches the facade. The International Hotel shines in the rays. The day is just beginning. Damien walks with Russell. The suits fit perfectly. The conversation sounds tense. They were waiting for the elevator. An argument broke out between the men. The chairman reminded them of the woman. Whispers were heard behind them. The employees recognized Brown. Russell mentioned the blouse scrap. Said it wasn't his type. The phrase sounded stinging and irritated Damien. Silence. The elevator descended slowly. Tension grew inside. Neither looked at the other. The doors opened. There was a girl standing in the back of the elevator. He entered first, not noticing her at first. People whisper. Someone says a name. Olivia looks up and freezes. The face in front of her is all too familiar. Heart flutters. Kiss emerges. Covers mouth, blushing, thoughts get confused. Heart beats faster, chest tightens. Why now? Damien smelled it. He frowned and concentrated. He turned around sharply. There was a hunter's gleam in his eyes. He searches for her, feels her, but can't find her. The steps are lost, the doors open. Max and Olivia come out. He didn't make it. He didn't see. The chairman turns to Russell. The voice is a tense thread. The conference is canceled. The secretary doesn't understand. He asks. The answer is the smell of that very woman. It was impossible to be mistaken. Russell asked him to come to his senses. There were enough rumors as it was. He needed to keep up appearances. Damien covered his face with his hand. He growled that he was fed up with everyone. His anger grew. He clenched his fist. The veins stood out. There was rage in his voice. An order to find her immediately while he was talking to the press. The man gave the order. At any cost, no matter what, the girl must be here. There was a TerraCure poster on the wall. It said there was an upcoming business conference. Max and Olivia approached the line in front of the security checkpoints, where the guard was checking badges. The wait dragged on. The girl thought, looking away. Thoughts began to take her away from what was happening. The stranger's face came into her mind. She tried to convince herself that it was just a resemblance, nothing more. His pocket vibrated. Max took out his phone and looked at the screen. Tommy's name appeared on the display. The man looked away. His voice became tense. He said he was going to answer a call. Olivia called him, but Max had already disappeared around the corner, leaving her alone in front of the white door and the guard. The girl looked at the TV screen. The start of the conference was announced by the host's official voice. She froze. A familiar face flashed across the stage. Her pupils dilated, the same man from the elevator. President of TerraCure. The man in the suit introduced himself as Damian Brown. Olivia remembered dragging the wounded man into her apartment. There was no longer any doubt. It was him. The girl's lips parted. Her green eyes couldn't tear themselves away from the screen. There were no thoughts, only shock. A voice rang out across the room. The chairman said that hope was a harsh word for those who were gravely ill. Brown acknowledged that living up to expectations, almost impossible, but he asked not to lose faith. The man assured that his company was striving to build a world in which there was room for hope. The director showed a presentation. On the screen was a smiling family, a child with a toy surrounded by care. Olivia stared at the image, a strange feeling of warmth and pain growing inside her at the same time. The word hope echoed in her mind. The girl tried to understand why it touched her so much. Meanwhile, Max was in the parking lot near the car. He still held the phone to his ear. The voice in the receiver was muffled. Max froze after asking again. He was told that Tommy had been found dead. The world around him seemed to disappear. His gaze froze. He stood there, unable to believe what he had heard. The words didn't reach me. Only loss, morgue, condolences. My heart sank, my mind clouded. The phone slipped out of his hands, hit the pavement and broke. The voice was still coming from the speaker. Max barely managed to stay on his feet. He leaned on the car bumper and covered his face with his other hand. Inside the conference room, dozens of journalists' hands reached toward the stage. Everyone wanted to ask the company's CEO questions. Damian suddenly felt weak. He clutched the table, his face turning pale. The man pulled himself together. Experience helped him maintain outward calm. He continued his performance. Brown glanced at Russell at the stage. He shook his head. The woman had not been found. She was not among the guests. The president frowned. Irritation was growing inside him. He was sure he had felt the girl in the elevator. Sweat broke out on his forehead. His breathing was ragged. His body was struggling to cope with the tension. People began to whisper. The question was in the air. What was happening to Mr. Brown? He straightened up, adjusted the microphone, and announced that he was handing the floor over to the company's chief scientist. Damian hurried backstage. Someone called out to him, trying to stop him. But Brown didn't turn around or slow down. Olivia watched the screen as the chairman walked away, and something inside her snapped. A determination rose inside her. She turned and headed for the door, whispering to herself, "I have to make it." A security guard met her at the entrance. He asked for a pass. The girl hesitated. Max still hadn't returned. The man didn't move. Olivia looked back. Her heart was pounding. Max was nowhere to be found. She tried to explain. She begged to let her in for at least a minute. The answer was stern. No pass. In the hallway, Russell was giving out instructions. He ordered an assistant to bring water and anesthetics. At that moment, a female voice caught his attention. Someone was asking to speak to Mr. Brown. The man turned around and saw the blonde. She insisted. Her voice sounded desperate and firm. The secretary narrowed his eyes. He looked more closely. The facial features, the hair, the voice, everything matched. There was a black car parked outside the building. Damian was inside, ripping his tie from his neck. He was breathing heavily. Sweat was running down his temples. His thoughts were confused. His chest was squeezed with pain. The man was sure that the girl was somewhere in the building. This feeling was impossible to confuse. The car door opened abruptly. A female figure fell on the seat next to the chairman. Damian looked up, surprise flashing in his eyes. His heart skipped a beat. Russell looked inside, smiled, and realized it was her. He stepped back smugly, considering the task accomplished and the blame lifted. Olivia was confused. She looked at both of them indignantly, not understanding what was happening. The girl froze, her gaze wandering. The name Damian flashed through her thoughts. She turned around, their eyes met, and time seemed to stand still. Everything inside her tightened. It was him. Her breathing was ragged, her lips were trembling. She couldn't believe it. The man from her memories was standing right in front of her. Both looked puzzled and confused. Their hearts seemed ready to jump out of their chests. Damien noted to himself that the headache was completely gone. But his heart was pounding like crazy. Olivia was surprised. Her body reacted exactly as it had that night. The girl again couldn't even move. She commanded herself a signal to come to her senses. Looking away, the girl assured that she was looking for Mr. Damien herself. He could not understand why he was needed. The girl assured that she needed help from his company. At that very moment, a very brave correspondent was taking a photo through the car window. Others immediately followed their colleague's example. Some even filmed it on their phones and asked Mr. Brown who the woman was. Russell was in the driver's seat. He wondered how these rascals knew how to find other people's gossip. Turning over his shoulder, he smiled openly and asked the passengers to fasten their seatbelts, because it seemed that he had forgotten a little how to drive. Olivia wanted to ask something, but she didn't have time. The driver's foot pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The girl was shaken by the sudden movement. She was even quite frightened by it. The correspondents began to express themselves in an unbridled manner. Someone ordered them to quickly get into the car and follow them. Our heroine instinctively closed her eyes. During the sharp turn, she leaned her hand on Mr. Brown, and then she caught his gaze. Olivia, slightly stuttering from embarrassment, asked for forgiveness. Damien did not understand why it was necessary to look for him. The girl said that a rare disease was slowly killing her daughter. That's why she asked to include the girl in the list for clinical trials. Mr. Brown said that candidates had already been selected. Olivia asked for another one. This was possible if the expenses were covered. Damien announced the sum of $30 million. The girl echoed the huge figure, not believing her ears. Our heroine did not have that much money, but she was ready to do everything that Mr. Brown would ask of her. Damien asked what she could do, but then Russell saw the reporter's car. He pointed at them, calling them idiots for not knowing when to give up. The assistant said that it was impossible to go any further. He promised to meet the boss near the nearest high-rise. He asked if 3 minutes would be enough. The answer was affirmative. Damien opened the doors, preparing to leave the car. The girl asked what he was doing. Mr. Brown was already standing at the door, and he said, 3 minutes. That was how long Olivia had to convince him. 2 pairs of feet were moving quickly, the heels of their shoes rhythmically tapping on the cobbled street. 2 reporters were trying to figure out where Mr. Brown had gone. Another said he had never seen the woman before, and that could have been a sensation. Olivia covered her mouth, trying not to give herself away. She looked warily at the reporters. Damien asked if the girl wanted to start trying to convince him, and while 3 minutes had not yet passed, he was all ears. Olivia promised to cover the entire amount, even if it takes 10 years or even a lifetime. Mr. assured her that she would not be able to do this even if she worked until her death. Then the girl grabbed Damien by his white shirt, reminded him that she had saved his life, and that should mean something. But the interlocutor remained silent, ignoring Olivia's words, and then he turned away from her and announced that she had exactly 2 minutes left. The girl asked him to just say what he wanted. She offered her soul, body, to take everything she had. Damien noticed that the girl was bolder than he had assumed. He looked at her carefully, studying her, and the girl held his gaze. Mr. Brown said he couldn't exchange her soul for money, but as for the body, everything needed to be discussed in detail. The girl, not understanding, asked for forgiveness. He came closer and put his arm around her waist. He said that with such determination he would surely be able to give him what he wanted. And without further thought, Damien grabbed her and threw her over his shoulder, easily carrying her. The girl only hiccuped nervously. Olivia screamed words of protest, but Mr. Brown was unmoved. He calmly asked the girl to hold on tighter. At some point, our heroine looked down and realized that the steps were being made through the air. She immediately screamed in fear, but after a few seconds, Damien placed her on a hard surface. Her heels clicked on the tiles. Russell was already there, waiting. He said Mr. Brown was 30 seconds late. He said he was not alone. Olivia wondered what it was, and whether the Mr. was even human. Then came the suggestion to go to the airport. The girl retorted that she didn't have a plane ticket. The guys both looked over their shoulders. Their gazes expressed surprise and condemnation. High in the dark blue sky, a private passenger plane flew like a bird. Our heroine sat in a chair with her head down. She reproached herself for behaving like an idiot. She forgot that all the rich people had their own private jets. The brunette sat opposite the girl and drank coffee. He asked if her name was Olivia Moore. She briefly confirmed. Damien reminded her of her words that she was ready to do anything. The girl nodded her head slightly and said that she was ready to do everything in her power. Mr. Brown then offered to make a deal. He would put Olivia's daughter on the clinical trial list and she would agree to meet him. Mr. Brown leaned forward, all ears. It seemed that hearing the answer was more important to him than anything else in the world. Olivia and Damien sat on the plane. Tension hung in the air. The man spoke first, his condition harsh and unexpected. Olivia froze. It took her a moment to realize what she had heard. The suggestion seemed insane to her. Damien elaborated. No romance, just regular contact. His voice was cold as ice, as if it was a normal business deal. The words hurt. The girl called it absurd. But Mr. Brown was unperturbed. He reminded her that Olivia herself was ready to do anything for her daughter. Her cheeks flushed. The indignation grew. This man was blackmailing her as if he knew no bounds. The question was direct. Was she ready to give up saving the child? The businessman's phrase sounded like a death sentence. A picture appeared before my eyes. A girl named Luna lying in a ward. A fragile body. A sweaty forehead. A clenched palm. The mother had no time for pride. Olivia knew she had no choice. She was ready to do anything for her daughter. The girl's fist clenched. Her heart froze. Saving the child became her only goal. She met Damien's gaze. There was steel in her voice. The answer was clear, she agreed. The girl firmly said that she was ready to make a deal. Doubts disappeared. Only determination remained. The man in uniform spoke first, clarifying that Max was the last person Tommy had called. The policeman led him into the morgue. The air was heavy, smelling sweetly putrid, overpowering the smell of formalin. The investigator's face was stony. Max couldn't contain his emotions. His gaze darted around. He was afraid of what he would see, but he couldn't stop. The cold, stiff body of his friend lay on the table. The sheet hid most of the marks, but the bite on his neck was obvious. His legs buckled. Max rushed forward. He didn't believe it. His heart refused to accept reality. The investigator explained that death had occurred on Saturday. The intonation sounded distant, like statistics. Max remembered that day. Tommy was going to act in a play. Why didn't he call again? He looked at the dead face. His soul was torn apart by pain. This should not have happened. The spot on his neck looked strange. Max leaned over. His heart started pounding even louder. He asked a question. The investigator suggested a bite. The carotid artery was affected. It didn't look like a bite from a domestic animal. There was a version about an exotic animal. But it sounded absurd. Tommy couldn't even take care of himself. The policeman thought about it. The version didn't add up. He sighed, noting the details to himself. Max stood over the body. His hand was shaking. The cold penetrated to the bones. He touched his friend's palm. He wanted to say goodbye, or get some kind of answer. Suddenly, the fingers twitched and closed. Max was taken aback by the surprise. This couldn't be an accident. A scream broke the silence. The investigator turned around. The law enforcement officer's gaze became alarmed. Max collapsed on the floor. He pointed at the corpse and stuttered something about the corpse's hand. His heart was beating like a drum. The investigator explained that this sometimes happens. There were times when muscles spontaneously contracted after brain death. Max didn't believe it. He was sure it wasn't a spasm. Tommy squeezed his fingers. He looked at his hand again. The skin beneath his fingers was icy. Maybe he had imagined it. The sun rose over the glass skyscraper. The day began bright and deceptively warm. Minson admired the chamber. Luna listened with curiosity and held his hand tightly. Minson explained that it was cozy here, like a hotel. Olivia couldn't help but make a remark. She asked not to confuse the child. But then she smiled slightly. Her friend was right. It really did feel like home. This was a great opportunity. Looking into the distance, Olivia thought that this was their chance. Maybe Luna could be saved. Minson suddenly gasped. She saw a familiar face. It was Damien Brown. The name was spoken aloud. Olivia turned sharply. Recognition stabbed inside her. He stood in a business suit talking to the doctor. His face was focused and cold. The article showed a girl in the car with him. The journalists discussed Mr. Brown's new girlfriend. Olivia flushed, blushed, and interrupted Minson, insisting that it was a misunderstanding. The girl was embarrassed. She tried to change the subject. Her friend had already guessed it was her. A doctor came up and introduced himself as Dr. Allen. He was responsible for Luna's treatment. Olivia shook his hand and introduced herself as the girl's mother. She kept her eyes on Brown. Damien felt terrible. Everything inside him was clenching. His patience was melting away. Olivia was afraid of making a mistake. She kept herself composed, trying to be collected. The doctor invited Luna for an examination. The girl in the pink dress clenched her fists and looked at her mother. Luna asked if her mother would go with her. The answer was gentle. Of course her mother would go. Damien squeezed his eyes shut. The headache was back. He could barely stop himself from screaming in pain. The doctor took Olivia aside. He wanted to talk. The girl was confused. She didn't want to leave her daughter. Minson offered to go with the baby. Olivia didn't have time to object. Her friend took the yellow backpack from her and said she could handle it. Damien reminded her impatiently that he was waiting. His voice cut through the air. Olivia followed him. She thanked Minson. She just waved her hand. The friend watched and thought. Something was definitely going on between them. At that moment, the girl froze. Someone caught her attention. Brown's secretary appeared before his eyes. The blonde hair and icy gaze seemed familiar. Olivia hurried after the president. He walked quickly without turning around. The girl called him. She wanted to know where they were going. There was no answer. Brown was tense. Everything was boiling inside. The steps were becoming sharper. He hoped that the pain would go away if the girl was nearby. But for some reason it didn't work. Damien glanced at his companion. There was anger in his eyes. Olivia was scared and wondered what she had done wrong. The sky was clear. Soft light streamed through the glass walls of the skyscraper. Max stepped out of the elevator holding his phone in his hand. Luna's room had to be somewhere on this floor. He stopped. He took a deep breath. The thought of Luna starting the treatment seemed unreal. His heart was beating faster than usual. A familiar voice was heard behind him. Max recognized the intonation. He turned tensely and walked in the direction from which the words came. He turned the corner and froze. Olivia appeared before his eyes. She was standing against the wall. There was another man next to her. Max stepped forward sharply. Everything inside flared up. His chest was squeezed. His temples were throbbing. His fists clenched on their own. Mr. Brown had the girl pinned against the wall. Her palms were on his shoulders. It was as if a flame had flared up between them. It had all happened just 10 minutes ago. 10 minutes ago, Olivia was running after a man. Her heart was pounding. Her thoughts were racing. She was trying to figure out where they were going and what this all meant. Brown walked silently. Then he asked if she had changed. His head was hurting more and more with each passing second. He didn't understand why. Damien came closer. The distance between them disappeared. Olivia's heart beat faster. The air became thicker. The man leaned over. His face was very close. His gaze was piercing. His voice sounded tired. Olivia barely contained herself. She blushed. She asked to stop. A wave of excitement burned inside. Damien leaned against the wall. His forehead leaned against her shoulder. He exhaled, feeling his hands tremble. The answer was obvious. She hadn't changed. Brown turned away, said she could go. The girl looked into his eyes. She doubted suddenly it was worth calling a doctor. The man clenched his teeth. He was holding back with difficulty. He told Olivia not to worry. His face remained cold. Olivia fell silent. She couldn't find what to say. She didn't recognize him as who he used to be. The girl turned around, slowly walked away. The words were left behind. Her shoulders were tense. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. They were quiet but heavy. Every movement was effortful. Brown collapsed against the wall. His body sank as if it had been mown down. He could no longer stand. His hand reached his pocket with difficulty. The phone trembled in his fingers. He needed to call Russell. The condition worsened sharply. The pupils began to shine yellow. The light in the eyes became frighteningly bright. The numbers to dial were visible on the phone screen. The screen swam before his eyes. Before he could dial, everything began to go dark. The head dropped to the side. There was no strength left. The hand with the phone fell. Consciousness faded. Max held a mug of tea. He tried to speak. The words stuck in his throat. He wanted to confess, but he couldn't. He made excuses. He said he was tired. He blamed himself. He doubted whether he should tell it like it was. Olivia asked why he disappeared during the conference. The intonation was wary. Max lowered his head and said that Tommy was dead. His eyes darkened. Everything inside him turned over. Olivia was shocked. She asked how it happened. She couldn't believe what she heard. Max explained. The police thought the boy had been killed by a wild animal. His voice was muffled. Olivia didn't understand. She asked if it had happened in the city center. The words sounded unreal. It all seemed impossible. Max admitted that he was confused. His thoughts were drowning in fear. The truth scared him. The guy was afraid to say more. He knew that she might not believe him. What he had witnessed earlier in the morgue. The full moon shone through the clouds. The light was hidden behind a black veil. Night was coming. Turner stood by the body, waiting for another guy. He didn't like the delay. He assumed he was looking for a woman again. Silos walked in. His face was sullen. His gaze was heavy. Every step was difficult. He admitted that he had visited the cafe. He was looking for a woman with Julia's scent, but there were no traces left. There was another woman working at the cafe now. Short brown hair. The previous employee had disappeared without a trace. The features of that girl came to mind. The hair, the eyes, the confused look. Turner reminded me of my purpose. He told me to focus. He lifted the sheet. It was time to face the truth. Tommy was lying underneath her. His face was pale. The mark on his neck was horrible. The bite looked inhuman. Silos froze. His eyes widened. His heart pounded in his temples. He recognized fear. This corpse was different. The fangs gleamed in the light. White, sharp. They looked menacing. Something had gone wrong. Silos said that it might be another failure. But Turner was sure that it was the opposite. Silos's eyes flashed blue. He didn't believe it. He wanted to object, but the words stuck. The full moon flared in the sky. Light fell on the body. Turner watched with a predatory grin. Everything was going as it should. Silas's power filled his body. He could barely contain himself. Every cell rang with tension from the full moon. The hand grabbed the edge of the table and began to transform into a predator's clawed paw. Turner commented with a grin. The experiment had worked. The beast had appeared, and it was real. Silos froze. A wolf stood before him. Gray, wild. Tommy, bitten in the neck, came to life. The predator's muscles tensed under his fur. Saliva dripped from the bared mouth. The eyes glowed yellow. The fangs flashed, and the muzzle was distorted into a predatory grin. Silas stood impassively before the grinning and aggressive predator. It looked like they had succeeded. This was his first beta. Earlier there was talk that the guy would make a great werewolf. Meanwhile, the wolf, with his head down, was preparing to pounce. His amber eyes were glowing, and saliva was dripping from the sharp fangs of his bared mouth. The animal pushed off the table and made a jump. The boys were amazed at its abilities. Soon the predator's mouth was ready to inflict a fatal bite on its victim. The scalpels, clamps, tray, and gauze covered in blood fell onto the floor with a metallic sound. A clawed paw covered in white fur came down on the wolf's neck, pinning him to the floor. The boy called out to Silos to stop causing harm. The white wolf replied that he would look at the behavior and decide for himself what to do. Silos put his paw on the head of the fallen werewolf neonate. He was now overflowing with power. The new werewolf growled angrily, but the white wolf only pressed his massive paw harder against the cold floor tiles, forcing him to submit to his authority. The interlocutor assumed that the werewolf realized who his leader was, and asked Silos how he felt being dominant. Did his strength increase? Soon the paws of the white wolf began to transform into the legs of a man. The last to change were the claws. It became clear to the werewolf that his strength would grow with the number of betas he created. The boy ordered Turnette to stop his chatter. Silos expressed his distrust of him, but he was ready to see what they would come to in the end. The blonde looked over his shoulder. The young man, sitting on the floor, pressed himself against the wall in fear. He was afraid of the monster. Silos made a dismissive remark. He stood with his back to the window. A full, pale moon was peering in. The young man was covered in sweat from fear. He begged for mercy, trembling all over. But soon a fanged, merciless mouth was reflected in his eyes. A scream was heard. The windows of the high-rise buildings were still lit up. The moon hung in the sky above the city. It was slightly covered by light clouds. The rays of the sun flooded the office of the pharmaceutical company. Damien was lying on the couch. He was clearly not feeling well. Russell came over and asked how the boss was feeling. The nurse called him. Everything was on the edge, and Mr. Brown could turn into a wolf in broad daylight. But he, not understanding, asked again about the nurse. The assistant reported that Olivia Moore had asked a medic to check him out. Now Damien understood everything. It turned out that the side effects of the drug were intensified, and because of this, it was more difficult for him to suppress his instincts. Russell cursed. There was no time for all this. After all, the shareholders' meeting was already scheduled for the current week. He thought it was worth canceling. Damien assured him that everything would go according to schedule. The assistant was skeptical. After all, Mr. Brown had already made enough noise at the last conference. The chief said he wanted to conduct an experiment. He was going to repeat what happened that night. He specified where Olivia Moore was now, and our heroine was in her apartment. Her window was lit from the inside, although all the neighbors had already turned off the lights and gone to bed. Max stood in the middle of the room with books and a teddy bear in his hands. He asked if this was necessary, too. The girl said that the bear's name was Grimaldi, and her daughter needed the toy. The interlocutor was surprised by the name. Olivia said that it was the name of the pizzeria where Luna had her first attack. Then our heroine's daughter had a birthday, and she prepared this teddy bear as a gift. Mother and Luna were having a great time and were having a blast. Then suddenly something strange started happening to the child. The young man's face tensed. His eyebrows drew together. Seeing this, Olivia came to her senses and asked for forgiveness. The girl assured that she did not want to start this conversation. But Max understood everything. He supported her in a friendly way, placing his hand on top of her wrist. He said that everything was fine, and that the girl could talk to him about anything. Our heroine thought about everything. Did she have the right to talk to Max? And was it worth telling about what happened to Damien Brown? Olivia thought about it and refused. After all, her friend was already shocked by Tommy's death. She thanked Max and promised to tell him everything. Then the doorbell rang. Our heroine looked back at the front door. She wasn't expecting anyone, and it was already late. The guy volunteered to go and open the door. Taking hold of the handle, he asked how he could help. A suitcase appeared in the crack of the door. The night visitor asked if Olivia Moore was home. The brunette who entered was none other than Mr. Damien Brown himself. Max was surprised to see the notorious businessman at the door of his girlfriend's apartment late at night. Our heroine approached the guys and asked the uninvited guest what he was doing here. He voiced that there was an urgent matter that needed to be discussed with her according to their contract. Olivia winced. Max asked sternly whether the respected one had seen the hour of the day. He said that it was indecent to show up so late to someone so late. Damien insisted that the same could be said about his interlocutor. He assured that the matter concerned only him and Olivia Moore personally. Damien realized that the girl was not aware of what had happened, and he suggested that the guy ask Olivia himself. Mr. Brown asked our heroine a direct question. Was he an unwelcome guest here at the moment? Max was waiting for the girl's answer too. Calling her by name, he began to look at her expectantly. Our heroine closed her eyes and began to think. She was infuriated by Mr. Brown's decision to behave as he pleased. In her mind, she called him an impudent fellow. After a pause, Olivia invited Mr. Brown to come in a restrained tone. Max was surprised, not believing his eyes. He asked himself how close they had to be to allow her to come to the apartment in the middle of the night. The guy looked at his girlfriend. Olivia was in a bad mood and frowned. In the background on the refrigerator were children's drawings on magnets, and on the shelves were jars with spices and bags of cereals. Max clenched his fists, barely restraining himself from showing negative emotions. Our heroine saw how Max's face changed and asked to let him explain everything. The young man announced his decision to leave, and turning to face the door, he announced the possibility of a subsequent meeting at the hospital. The girl called Max by name, asked him to stop, but he ignored her call and continued the action. Mr. Brown looked at the boy, wondering why he already knew that name. Then Damien suddenly remembered that it was he who had taken the interview the other day. Soon the doors closed behind Max. The girl asked Mr. Brown not to come like that again without warning or invitation. Damien, still waiting for no invitation, went into the apartment. In a surprised tone, he asked how Miss Moore had suggested dating. She hesitated with an answer. The gentleman put his black leather suitcase on the floor. He was going to discuss all the details of their contract today. Soon Damien laid out papers on the table. It was a contract, which clearly stated the way their meetings would be conducted. The girl did not understand why this was so necessary. She read carefully page after page, and then she expressed disagreement with the point where Olivia Moore should have followed all of Damien Brown's instructions. The businessman took a ballpoint pen with a gold pattern from the inside pocket of his jacket. Silently, he handed it to the girl. He asked Olivia to sign the document. Our heroine hesitated. The girl paused, thinking. Her face twisted. She wondered why she had to do this. Her gaze slid to her daughter's teddy bear. Grimaldi was carefully placed on the edge of the table by Max. A picture suddenly appeared before the mother's eyes. A blonde girl was smiling and hugging a new teddy bear. Her eyes sparkled with joy. Olivia asked if Mr. Brown would do everything he could for her daughter. The answer was yes. Our heroine literally snatched the signature pen from her employer's hands and began to sign the papers in scribbles. Mr. Brown was pleased and asked if she remembered the details of their first meeting. The girl briefly confirmed. Damien asked if it happened here on this sofa. He threw his jacket on the armrest. The young man was quickly unbuttoning his shirt. Olivia stuttered a little as she asked what he intended to do. Mr. Brown said he wanted to recreate the events of that night. He recalled sitting on the couch, and the girl was dressed in something blue. The young man's hand slid around Olivia's waist. The girl asked him to stop. She thought there was no need for that. She had the shirt that the guest had torn. Soon our heroine was already dressed in the same clothes as that night. She sat down next to her employer on the sofa again. She asked what she should do next. Damien asked her to just sit next to him for a while. The girl didn't understand, and the brunette found it strange that he didn't feel any changes. Just like back in the hospital. He assumed that it was because there was no rain today, but then he dismissed the thought and glanced sideways at the open suitcase. He made another assumption. Meanwhile, Max was restless. After all, Olivia had no idea how dangerous that man could be. I wanted to warn the girl to stay as far away from this guy as possible. The young man clutched his head. He was worried about whether he had the right to do this. After all, he himself suggested that Olivia ask the head of the pharmaceutical company for help. Then his smartphone vibrated. Max picked up the device and accepted the incoming call. It was from the police. What they told him seemed impossible. It turned out that the body of his friend Tommy had disappeared from the morgue. The officer assured that everything possible was being done to find it. Max said he would be there soon. But the policeman said it was not worth it. The case was classified and would not be presented to the public. Suddenly, the young man remembered how his friend's corpse had grabbed his hand in the morgue, and he believed that he should have figured it all out himself. Olivia indignantly asked Mr. Brown what he was doing, and she herself retreated back in small steps. Damien put the gun in her hands, asked her to take the weapon, and asked her to shoot him. The girl froze. Shock was visible in her eyes. Her hand was shaking. As she slowly lowered the weapon onto the table, the man watched her, not looking away. The fingers relaxed. Steel touched wood. The gun lay between them like a final argument. Olivia muttered that he had gone too far. Brown didn't look away. A shadow of tension appeared on his face. He recognized the absurdity of the situation, but he had no other way to test its strength. The man placed his hand on top. The touch was firm. The gun was under her palm again. Damien spoke. The seriousness in his voice was frightening. He drew his weapon. He leaned forward, bending toward her. His shirt was unbuttoned. His chest was rising quickly. The words sounded like a sentence. Damien slowly pointed the gun at his own hand. His voice didn't waver. He asked for one thing, to be healed just like that night. Olivia gasped. Her pulse was pounding. Her eyes widened. She couldn't believe it. This was insane. This was pure emotional blackmail. The finger slid to the trigger. A moment and everything changed. The girl rushed forward. The voice escaped her lips. The cry was piercing. My breath caught. My fingers reached for the gun. He didn't move. His face remained icy. Everything seemed like a dream. The girl intercepted the weapon. It slipped. It fell on the carpet. Her heart thundered in her ears. Her fingers trembled. She wanted only one thing: to stop it. Olivia accidentally bumped into the man. They collapsed on the couch together. Her chest was seething with anger. She clutched the fabric of her shirt. There was reproach in her voice. He shouldn't have hurt himself. Doubt flickered in his eyes. Damien assured her it didn't matter. He could handle it. For her, he said, this act was just an excuse for blackmail. His fingers slid along her waist. Her body tensed. She hadn't expected this. The man continued, mentioned his position, the drugs, the press, anything that could be used against him. Olivia remained on him. Her eyes darted. Her heart pounded. He had said that this would suit a journalist perfectly. She was angered by these innuendos. The girl clenched her fists. Her chest rose unevenly. She remembered her daughter. Everything that had been lived through. Everyone who had helped. Faith in goodness. She could not remain silent. Olivia exclaimed that she couldn't stand by while someone was suffering. That was her. That was how life had raised her. And Luna, a picture of her daughter floated before her eyes. Olivia and Max were holding hands. Luna was standing between them with a teddy bear. To the right were Minson and the boss. Everyone was smiling. There was a family. The girl admitted that she would have helped anyone. Damien simply needed help then. Not because he was the president, but because he was wounded. Her voice broke. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't want to regret this. She didn't want her kindness to be perceived as weakness. Olivia exhaled. She asked why he treated her with such disdain. Her words were direct. The questions grew. Brown was taken aback. Surprise froze in his eyes. Perhaps he had not expected tears. Perhaps he had expected anger, but not this. The girl's thoughts returned to the kiss. That night, that woman, Julia. The name spoken through a scream. Olivia saw him freeze. Her gaze pierced him. He couldn't believe she knew. The girl continued. That night he called someone else's name. Everything began to make sense. Too many coincidences, too much pain. She begged. She wanted to understand who Julia was, how she was connected, why it was like this, why he disappeared, why he was covered in blood. But he didn't hear. Julia appeared before his eyes, standing next to him, crying, the same look, the same pain. She was like a ghost from the past. The facial features, the hair, the voice, it all matched. Horror gripped his heart. He realized how much Olivia resembled that woman. His hand slipped from her waist. He rose slowly, said it was time to stop. Confusion flashed in his eyes. She didn't understand what he was talking about. The man was getting dressed, leaving. The bag was in his hand. Everything was cut off. But her heart sank from how it ended. He went out. The door slammed shut. The girl was left alone. Her lips were trembling. Everything inside was burning. The tears did not stop. The pain did not let up. The phone vibrated on the table. The screen flashed in her eyes. The name on the screen made her heart stop. The hand reached out. Olivia picked up the phone, took a deep breath, answered the incoming call. The boss was on the line. His voice was warm. He asked about Luna. The words were comforting. The man said that the child was the most important thing. Olivia held back tears. She apologized for being fired, but in response she heard understanding. The main thing was caring for her daughter. The boss asked her to focus on recovery. He promised support. The girl clenched her fist. The pain retreated for a moment. Meanwhile, somewhere in the darkness, a black Jeep pulled up. The door opened. A man got out. It was Russell. He asked if there had been any success with Olivia Moore. He was interested in progress, but Brown was gloomy. The bag in his hand was shaking. The words fell from his lips. He did not intend to continue any longer. He decided to find another way. The secretary was dumbfounded. The assistant couldn't believe it. He shouted, was indignant, reminded about the shareholders' council, about how everything had already been decided. Brown gripped the car door. Anger and pain warred inside him. There was one voice in his head. He couldn't hurt anyone. He admitted in his mind that he was worried. Not about the project, not about the company, about her. At this time, the usual atmosphere reigned in the club Bikame. The pink sign blinked in neon. Silos was sprawled on the couch, a glass in one hand, a phone in the other. He was reading an article, photos, about that woman. There was Brown in the photo, with the one that looked like Julia. The girl's face couldn't get out of my head. The glass goblet hit the table with a crash. The cognac spilled over the edge. Silos clutched the phone. Inside, everything was boiling with anger. His thoughts were noisy. Determination flashed in his eyes. The thought struck him like an electric shock. The boy had to go back. Find that woman. Find out who she really was. Once and for all. It was a clear, sunny day. The roofs of the high-rise buildings stretched into the blue. It seemed that they almost touched the light clouds. The girl approached the reception, introduced herself as Olivia Moore, said that she wanted to see Mr. Brown. The question arose, was there an appointment? The blonde answered negatively. The secretary reported that Mr. Brown was currently absent. The girl wanted to know where he was. The company employee could not answer, but she suggested that the visitor leave him a message. The girl was racking her brains over what she should do now. It seemed that Mr. Brown would no longer agree to meet her after what had happened. It was the best thing Olivia had come up with after much thought. But if she wanted to save her daughter, she had to make him change his mind at all costs. The visitor assured that everything was in order, and she intended to wait here until Mr. Brown returned. A tall brunette with a bouquet of flowers was heading towards the grave. A black car was parked nearby. He placed the flowers on the gravestone. In a quiet and sad voice, he greeted the deceased Julia. Demian complained to her that something had been wrong with him lately. He had recently smelled her scent on a stranger, and it seemed that she had even passed. Headache when he was nearby. Demian admitted that at some point he even began to confuse that girl with her. The brunette told the deceased that she was the only person who accepted him despite his werewolf status. That's why Demian fell in love with her. The boy spent years trying to develop a drug that would suppress his werewolf instincts. He wanted to be sure that he wouldn't hurt Julia. He wanted to be with the girl forever. And even after her death, Demian continued his research. He thought it was the only way to preserve her memory. So the man planned to use that woman to perfect the medicine. But at some point he was overcome by doubts. The assistant hurried to Demian. He told the boss that Olivia Moore was waiting for him in the office, and it seemed that the girl was not ready to give up. Mr. Brown bit his lip. He remembered his last conversation with Olivia. Then the girl said that he might not believe her, but she couldn't stand aside while someone was suffering. Demian clenched his fist tightly. He was overwhelmed with emotion. The chief remembered Russell saying that the girl's friend supposedly worked in the cafe, asked to find out where it was. The assistant was glad that the work on the medicine was resumed. Demian denied it. The experiment was still suspended. Russell didn't understand why he had gone to that cafe then. Mr. Brown looked over his shoulder. He said he had to pay back a debt to Olivia Moore. A cozy cafe. The few visitors enjoyed chatting in a pleasant atmosphere. The girl was clarifying. It turned out that she was being offered to become Luna's nanny. Mr. Brown confirmed this. He thought that it would be difficult for Mrs. Moore to look after her daughter all day. And Russell thought that if he continued to treat the girl, he could continue working on the cure for the boss, and Olivia herself would not even understand anything. Minson replied that in that case she wanted a salary 3 times greater than her current one. Demian voiced his offer to pay the nanny 10 times more. The girl could not believe her ears. The employer asked in return for a promise to keep this a secret from Mrs. Moore. The interlocutor could not understand why. She thought that Olivia would be glad of it. Demian said he wanted to tell Mrs. Moore himself. Minson agreed. After all, it didn't seem like she would hide something terrible from her friend. The blonde looked out the cafe window. He cursed harshly. He was indignant at what Demian Brown was doing here. The guy gritted his teeth with negative emotions. He thought that he came here hoping to see that woman again, but something alerted Demian. He looked around warily. A moment later, he covered the girl with himself. Meanwhile, a stone flew into the window, breaking the glass. The man noticed the smell. It made him quite wary. He immediately looked over his shoulder. At this time, a guy in black clothes with a hood approached them. Russell said Silas's name in surprise. The blond man took off his hood. His face was frowning and grinning. His long bangs fell over his eyes. Demian assumed that the guy was here because of him, and asked him to stop. The interlocutor barked at them not to tell him what to do and rushed at Mr. Brown. Demian pushed the girl onto his assistant Russell, so as not to hit her while repelling the attack of the aggressor. And at the same time he dodged the blow. The attacker became very angry with her. After the failure, the guy began to retreat to the wall. Demian approached him with small steps. He urged Silos to retreat. After all, the forces were unequal, and no matter how much time passed, this could not change. The aggressor was confident in himself, and he wanted to demonstrate the opposite. He rolled his eyes and assured that a lot had changed. Silos raised his fist again for a crushing blow. The enemy was unperturbed. Not a single muscle moved on his face, but Demian deftly dodged, remaining unharmed. His face expressed contempt for his opponent. He grabbed Silos by the clothes with one right hand and threw the blonde opponent to the floor with force. The powerful blow sent shards of floor tiles flying to the sides, and blood began to appear from the mouth of the fallen man. Demian grabbed his opponent by the throat. He wheezed. The guy noticed that Silos had undoubtedly become stronger, but he was still no match for him. A quiet, calm reminder followed. He was the older brother and the head of the family. Silos, his throat tight, hissed, "Shut up!" People started pointing and asking if that was Mr. Brown. The guy's face tightened. Someone even dared to take a photo with a camera. Demian noticed them and let go of his brother's throat. The guy cursed under his breath. The paparazzi were pleased with the successful shot, but seeing the brunette's face, they decided that they should run away from here as quickly as possible. The assistant rushed forward. As he ran, he shouted that he would sort it out. The chief called him by name. Damien took a step next to his brother, who was lying on the floor. On his hand were long animal claws. Lunging forward, Silos tried to scratch his older brother's face. A dark-colored, unremarkable car was racing along the city road at high speed. The boys were delighted to have the sensational pictures of Damien Brown, and they were already imagining how the press would try to get their hands on them. The guy in the passenger seat looked at the details of those photos. He was looking forward to telling reporters that Damien Brown had tried to kill a man. Suddenly, the driver of the car braked sharply. The body leaned forward, held by the seatbelt. The guy barked at the driver that he seemed to have forgotten how to drive, and his hands were shaking. He began to justify himself by saying that the animal on the road appeared out of nowhere. On the road, right in front of the car, blocking the way, stood a light red predator. It looked like a wild dog. It had amazing azure-colored eyes. A threatening growl came from its bared mouth. The animal jumped and started running towards the car. The guys were very scared. The mouth of a predator with deadly teeth appeared in the windshield. His eyes glowed with the thirst to kill. The boy covered the bleeding wounds on his shoulder. The white shirt turned scarlet. Silos was trying to catch his breath after being strangled. His claws were covered in his opponent's blood. The werewolf suddenly remembered the abbot's words, that they needed to lie low in order to gather strength. If Damien had found out about that, their plan could have collapsed. The boy realized that the coach was right, and this time he lost control. Without looking up, he told Damien to stay away from him in the future. Silos looked at the floor without raising his eyes to his opponent. He paused. He asked if he had forgotten that he also bore the surname Brown. The brunette said that their family would always wait for Silos, and he clutched a wooden cross in his hand. The guy said that it was because of Damien that he decided to leave the family, and his brother knew about it like no one else. He suggested enjoying his position as head while he could. He warned that he would soon throw Damien off his pedestal, and that his brother would give up the ghost at that very moment. Mr. Brown was soon alone. He noted to himself that Silas had become much stronger since their last meeting. He wondered what had happened. There was a call coming in. The caller greeted Mr. Brown. The guy answered and asked if everything was okay. The interlocutor wanted to inform him that Mrs. Olivia Moore was still waiting for him. Damien was surprised by her persistence. It was already dark outside. The man's footsteps echoed along the empty corridor of the company. Damien turned into the reception area of his office. A blonde girl was sitting asleep on the visitor's chair. The guy asked himself in surprise, did Olivia really spend the whole day here? The girl called her daughter by name in her sleep. Mr. Brown thought. He came closer to the visitor. He carefully examined her sleeping. He thought to himself that Silos still wanted revenge today. He could also harm Olivia. He picked up the fast-sleeping girl in his arms. Damien carried the person who had saved him. He thought that his instincts were right. He couldn't continue seeing her, even if it meant freezing the development of the cure. The next morning, the weather was clear and sunny. The office building of Mr. Brown's company. Rasal, having barely seen the chief, called out to him in alarm. He insisted on canceling today's shareholders' meeting. There was a lack of understanding on Damon's part. The assistant pointed to the smartphone screen. He said that what happened yesterday was already on the front page of the news. Mr. Brown looked at the photo and the article on his newsfeed. Later, he cursed politely. The hall was getting ready for the event. They were setting up a projector for the presentation. Journalists were talking quietly among themselves and checking their equipment. Russell cursed. He had no idea that anyone else had managed to take a photo that day. This should not have happened. The vultures were just waiting. A reason to make a scandal. Damien said that the meeting would take place as planned. The assistant responded rudely. He was afraid that the boss might feel unwell. Mr. Brown insisted that by canceling the meeting, they would be confirming the rumors that the press had spread. Russell suggested inviting Olivia Moore. She could be there in case something happened. The chief did not listen to anything else. He was absorbed in reading the plan of his speech. And our heroine stood near her daughter's room. She was thinking about how she hadn't managed to meet Damien Brown yesterday. It seemed strange to her. The last memory she had was of her waiting outside his office. So the question arose as to how she could have woken up in Luna's room. Then Max hurried to greet the blonde. She asked him what he was doing here. The guy assured him that he needed to talk to Olivia about something. She suggested that they sit down. Max immediately asked the question that was bothering him. What was happening between her and Mr. Brown? The interlocutor asked him to clarify what he meant. The guy reminded that the guy showed up at Olivia's in the middle of the night and then hugged her in the hallway. The girl assured that her friend had misunderstood everything, that she was simply supporting Mr. Brown so that he would not faint, and that he came to her then to discuss Luna's illness. Olivia said sadly that she would prefer it to be as her friend described it. He asked what she meant by that. As a mother, she was afraid that Luna would be excluded from the clinical trials. Damian Brown told her that he wanted to end them. Olivia was sad that he didn't even want to see her. Max comfortingly covered her hand with his. He tenderly said her name. The guy insisted that his friend shouldn't trust that dangerous man. Our heroine asked again. Max assured that Damian had tried to kill someone. His friend asked if he was sure about that. Then Minson opened the door. From the threshold she declared that it was all a lie. The girl assured that she saw everything with her own eyes. They were in a cafe then, when some scumbag attacked Damian Brown. Olivia asked her friend why Mr. Brown was there at all. Her friend said that he came to ask her to be Luna's nanny. She explained that Damian needed someone to look after the girl during her treatment, and she said what a great offer she had for payment. Only then did Minson realize that she had let it slip. But Olivia asked again in surprise about her daughter's treatment. Our heroine sat down and clasped her head in her hands. What she heard was a huge relief. The girl wondered why Mr. Brown had suddenly changed his mind. And jumping up, she decided to talk to him urgently. There was something she needed to ask. Max asked his girlfriend to slow down. He offered to take her another day. The meeting was impossible today. There was a meeting with shareholders right now. But it didn't matter to Olivia. She decided to wait until Mr. Brown finished his business. Having greeted the ladies and gentlemen, the speaker announced the beginning of the shareholders' meeting of their company. Russell grumbled at the boss. The subject of his barbs was the stubbornness of the Brown family. Damian, in denial, offered his own solution: stick to principles. The assistant cursed indignantly and asked what had happened then with the development of the ideal medicine for Damian himself. The speaker announced that the meeting would be opened by the company's president, Damian Brown. An aide asked if he had really decided to go. The audience applauded. The man was going up to the podium. The journalists started clicking their cameras. The flashes of the cameras were irritatingly blinding to the eyes, and the sounds of the shutters added to the unpleasant sensations. Beads of sweat ran down Damian's face. He was experiencing a hellish headache and was holding onto the counter so as not to fall. And a moment later, dizziness joined the pain. The speaker asked Mr. Brown if he was all right. Damian answered him affirmatively, and cursed harshly to himself. He assumed that he had overdone it with the medicine. His hands were shaking treacherously. But still, the male head of the company pulled himself together and appeared before the shareholders and journalists on the podium. Camera lenses were still clicking. He said hello. He thanked me for my time. One of the press asked if Mr. Brown could confirm that it was him in the photo. There was a request to shed light on the report of his alleged abuse of psychotropic drugs, and whether this was the reason he left the press conference. They asked if he really had a rare disease. They were interested in whether his strange behavior was caused by the disease or the medication. The man held his forehead with his hand. The headache wouldn't go away. Russell from the audience saw the gravity of the situation. He cursed angrily under his breath. The assistant assumed that Damian was on the verge of losing control. The brunette's eyes changed color to amber, as if he was ready to transform. Russell decided to do something, and immediately rushed to help the boss. A second later he was there, speaking in a loud voice so that Damian would immediately pull himself together. The head of the company's hands were shaking. He clenched his teeth. It was hard to breathe. His heart beat faster. The teeth were changing. The pulse was pounding in his ears. Damian realized that he was at the limit. He could no longer contain himself. Suddenly Olivia opened the doors to the hall. She called out to Mr. Brown from the threshold. Russell sat next to the chief. Raising his head, he could not believe his eyes and the unexpected rescue. It was that same Olivia Moore. Damian could barely see what was happening around him, but he clearly smelled a familiar smell. Olivia hurried towards him, almost running. The man extended his hand to his savior. Before their fingers had even touched, something almost magical began to happen. Damian immediately embraced the girl. He pressed his whole body against hers, and their fingers intertwined. Olivia asked if he was okay. The man couldn't answer, he just breathed heavily. Damian could breathe again, and he hoped that he would soon feel much better. He said Olivia's name tenderly. Our heroine thought that although Mr. Brown pushed her away, She could not get him out of her mind and stop worrying about him. The girl felt that Damien needed her, and it seemed that she was the only one who could help him. The couple was in close contact, and dozens of reporters rushed to take pictures with their cameras without hesitation. Olivia glanced warily over her shoulder. Mr. Brown's face was still tense. Damien called his assistant. Russell was worried and asked the chief how he was feeling. Mr. Brown assured that he was already better, and ordered Mrs. Moore to be taken away from here. And then he threw a hooded robe over the girl's shoulders. He advised her to use it to hide her face. He told her to wait for him in the office where Russell would lead her. Damien thought with indignation that the girl had burst in here in front of sensation-hungry reporters, and it was rather impudent of Olivia. But it was impossible to say that Mr. Brown was surprised. He realized that such was the girl's character. Someone in the audience shouted, pointing, "Look, she's leaving!" As Russell led Mrs. Moore out the service entrance, Damien Brown decided to distract the audience. He addressed the ladies and gentlemen from behind the podium. Everyone in the room turned their heads towards the sound. The head of the corporation said that he had not yet finished his speech. He asked permission to explain what had happened. Olivia sat on the sofa in Mr. Brown's office. She read the latest news on her smartphone. The girl came to the conclusion that Damien suffered from a rare disease, and that's why his head hurt so much. Here the door opened. Our heroine stopped reading and turned her attention to the person who entered. It was Mr. Brown. The girl asked him if he had gotten better since their separation. He briefly confirmed it, and then he added that everything worked out thanks to her efforts. Olivia asked again in surprise. Our heroine insisted that Mr. Brown was most likely mistaken. After all, she had essentially done nothing. She referred to the conversation with Minson. That Mr. Brown had asked her friend to be Luna's nanny. She asked if he was planning to exclude her daughter from the clinical trials. The man assured that the girl would continue treatment here. Olivia reminded him about the contract. Brown said that it had been canceled. The girl asked, wasn't it because of him that Damien agreed to treat her daughter? She couldn't understand why such a change had happened. The CEO sighed, and he thought that after Mrs. Moore had helped him in front of all those reporters, he felt that her body was getting back to normal faster than ever. And then I remembered her words, that thanks to the kindness of those around her, she had a desire to give back. Mr. Brown said that at the shareholders' meeting, Olivia could see that she could be in trouble if she got involved with him. That's why he broke the contract. Damien assured her that her daughter would receive treatment in any case, and suggested that Mrs. Moore consider that this was his way of repaying her kindness. Our heroine's face flushed. It was hard for her to control her emotions. The girl stood up abruptly from the sofa. She said, stuttering slightly, that it was time for her to go. Damien assumed the reporters were still at the entrance. He suggested waiting until they left. Mrs. Moore assured him that she would like to cook dinner for her daughter. Our heroine did not continue the conversation any longer. She turned abruptly and left the room. Damien called out her name after her, but the door slammed behind her. Olivia stood in the elevator. She was horrified that Mr. Brown remembered everything she had said, and she decided to get out of there as soon as possible. The girl still couldn't believe that Damien had broken their contract out of concern, but she didn't understand why he was so concerned about her. The elevator doors opened. The guys were just discussing where she went. It seemed like she disappeared into thin air. The other one was ready to swear that I saw that woman at the previous conference. I came to the conclusion that there was something there, but I couldn't even guess who that mysterious blonde was. The guys started arguing about the color of the stranger's hair. The friend gave the example of hair color, pointing to Olivia, who was standing nearby, wanting to go unnoticed. The colleague said that the girl's clothes were also similar. Our heroine realized that she could be recognized by the ubiquitous journalists. Then the elevator pulled up. The doors opened. The reporters entered the cabin, and Olivia hurried away from their sight. The guys just looked at each other in bewilderment, as if asking each other what just happened. The events moved to the journalist's office. It was room number 802. The journalist wrote an article predicting a fall in the company's shares after Damien Brown's revelation about his battle with a rare disease. Max was soon drafting an article for his newspaper column, where he had worked for many years. His hands seemed to have grown together with the keyboard, and his thoughts were forming into text. He caught himself not wanting to write about Mr. Brown's illness in this article. The boss appeared behind the guy. He announced the sensational headline: Damien Brown's secret love crashed into shareholders' meeting. Max assured that it was the illness that would directly impact the stock market. The boss believed that none of the readers of their newspaper were interested in business news. Only the entertainment section excited readers. He thought it would be worthwhile to find out who the woman was. The journalist apologized. He said it was too late. The article had been published. The editor was indignant. He asked in a raised voice whether Reynolds wanted to be fired. Max remembered that when he got there, Olivia and Mr. Brown were sitting close to each other. And for some reason, he didn't dare interfere. The boss read something from the smartphone screen and cursed. It turned out that another publishing house had already published the sequel. It turned out that the woman was a relative of someone who was undergoing treatment at the company. There was an article on the screen. Max was indignant that the press had found out about it. Reporters, despite the late hour, were still crowded and waiting outside the office of Mr. Damian Brown's company. And at that very time, in the ward for Luna Moore, our heroine was sitting on her daughter's bed. The girl was fast asleep, hugging her teddy bear. Then Olivia's phone vibrated on the bedside table. It was Max calling. The girl was just about to call him, and she immediately started telling him something about what happened at the shareholders' meeting. But her friend interrupted her. Reported that reporters were now obsessed with her. The press seemed to have misinterpreted what was going on between the blonde and Mr. Brown. Olivia didn't understand what they were talking about. The journalist assured that everyone was now trying to find out who she was in order to write false articles. He was sure that as soon as they found out, they would immediately write about Luna's illness. And if Mrs. Moore was closely watched, the company could want to interrupt the girl's treatment. This stunned the girl. That's why Max asked her not to leave the hospital, and to let her know if she needed anything. Olivia agreed, and assured that she could also ask Minson, but the friend asked to let him too. After all, he wanted to help her too. The girl thanked her friend and promised to write to him if she needed any help. Max leaned back in his chair tiredly. He thought that it was scary that if he didn't do anything, he could lose her. The car roared as it stopped at the front entrance of the company's office. Russell complained that reporters were up to their old tricks again. He thought that reporting the illness was the best option. In that case, the rumors about drugs will disappear. The assistant glanced over his shoulder at Mr. Brown, smiling. Damien stated that recklessness was sometimes quite useful. The interlocutor did not even doubt it. He had already suggested going. He assumed that there was no need to be afraid of the press. Reporters asked Mr. Brown whether his illness was hereditary, and whether the company's latest research was related with his state of health. And they were also interested in who the woman was who showed up at the shareholders' meeting. And was she related to one of the patients? Damien wondered how the press had found out about it. Walking steadily, he wondered what kind of rat could have leaked information to the reporters. Suddenly, the face of the guy who was in Olivia's apartment that evening appeared before my eyes. After all, he was a reporter. Russell swore, and rhetorically asked how they could have known about Mrs. Moore. Damien said that there was an informant in the hospital, and so Mr. Brown announced the decision to send Olivia to his penthouse. When Damien and his assistant entered, they saw Olivia with a red-haired journalist. The girl was surprised. Mr. Brown visibly tensed at the sight of the stranger. His silence spoke louder than words. He strode towards Mrs. Moore. The girl asked in fear what had happened. Damien asked Mrs. Moore to stand behind him. He shielded her from the dubious, in his opinion, type of journalist. Mac indignantly asked in a raised voice what Mr. Brown was allowing himself to do. He showed the screen of his smartphone. There was a gossip article in Max's column. Damien asked if Mr. Reynolds was aware of the article their publishing house had published. The journalist steadfastly endured the piercing gaze. Of course he knew. Yesterday he had managed to see the editor's edits to his article. Mr. Brown went on the offensive. He asked if he had told the press about Olivia, and how much he had been paid for the information. The guy was indignant. Here Olivia stood up for her friend. She began to assure him that yesterday she had run into several journalists in the elevator, and they must have recognized her. Damien clenched his fists, told his assistant that this department was now closed to outsiders, demanded that orders be given right now. Russell apologized and asked for clarification. The chief said that all those who had no direct connection with the treatment of Luna. Max protested furiously. He argued that Olivia needed someone to help her. The brunette wondered how he could help. The reporter spoke of basic household needs, such as laundry. Mr. Brown assured that he would delegate this to one of the staff. Olivia intervened in the men's argument. She assured Max that she really was fine. The redhead offered to take her home. He urged her to leave through the back door to avoid reporters. Damien grabbed the girl's hand tightly. said that she would go to his penthouse. Mrs. Moore asked why. The man assured her that it was safer that way, and besides, it had everything she needed. Demian leaned his head towards the girl's ear. He said that the guy wouldn't get any better if she stayed here. After all, if journalists find out that Olivia is connected to him, the paparazzi will start pursuing him too. Demian said that reporters would first find his house and then get to his work. Olivia pictured this. She didn't want to drag her friend into trouble. After all, she thought that she already owed him quite a lot, and she didn't want her friend to suffer because of her. That's why our heroine made a decision. She sincerely thanked Max for everything he did and took care of her and baby Luna. Olivia assured her friend that she could handle it, and if anything happened, Mr. Brown was ready to help. Demian was leaving, and the girl was hurrying to leave after him. Looking back over her shoulder, she said goodbye to her friend until the meeting. Max watched for a long time, and he thought without finding an answer. Why did Olivia allow a dubious guy to push her around? And what was going on between them? Our heroine sat on a chair in Mr. Brown's penthouse. She couldn't believe she was in such a place. Olivia thought that everything was somehow too complicated, and she asked herself what she was doing. On TV, they reported. According to reports, he was involved in an unethical relationship with a relative of a patient undergoing treatment at the clinic. The girl was extremely shocked that the breaking news was talking about her and Damian Brown. Olivia was indignant at the stupid nonsense that was being invented by the press. Then she was brought out of her reverie by a sound. Someone turned off the news broadcast on the screen with a remote control and it went out. Only then did Mrs. Moore notice the man who had entered. Damian asked her not to worry and assured her that he had taken care of deleting her photo. Therefore, Olivia's identity should not be revealed. The girl emphasized that they also talked about Mr. Brown, but the man did not care. Her safety was more important. The girl recalled that it was she who begged to include her daughter in the clinical trials. Demian recalled that he himself used these tests to make the girl do all sorts of nonsense. She blamed herself for breaking in under the cameras of reporters. Olivia couldn't just sit and do nothing. She decided to call Max. She wanted to make an anonymous statement and clear everything up. She was rummaging through her phone looking for her reporter friend's number, but Demian stopped her. He asked Olivia to worry only about herself, and he assured her that everything would be fine with him. Mr. Brown reminded her of the agreement that her reporter friend would not interfere in their affairs. He asked the girl to forget about that news and greet the guest. Olivia asked again in surprise. Looking back, our heroine noticed that Mr. Brown's assistant was holding her daughter Luna in his arms. The girl's face was glowing with happiness. She joyfully called out to her mother. The meeting was joyful. Emotions were running high. Olivia asked her daughter how she ended up there. She answered that the doctor had brought her and allowed her to play with her mother. Damian watched as his mother hugged Luna, and each of them was immensely happy. Olivia couldn't stop admiring her little daughter for a long time. She listened to her cheerful voice and stroked her silky hair. Then they both took a bubble bath. The little girl put some foam on her head and said it was like a fluffy hat. They had fun. Mother began to remove foam from Luna's face so that it would not get into her eyes. She asked what she liked most. It was the steak they were eating. The roasted meat was not like the ones they usually ate before. And it was true because their small family could not afford luxury. My daughter said that she was also impressed by the car ride, that it was fun to race at high speed through the city streets. Olivia was happy for her sunshine, but she herself thought sadly about how hard it was for the little girl in the hospital. After all, when they first came to Mr. Brown's clinic, the mother thought that her moon would finally be saved. But until now, there had only been checkups, and the girl wasn't getting any better. And then Damian announced that he was going to break their contract, and then Olivia's whole world collapsed. Then the girl was angry with him, and she considered him an egocentric, shameless liar. But then he asked the girl to take care of herself, assuring that everything would be fine with him. The girl thought about it and leaned on her knees and became sad. Luna was worried about her mommy. Olivia wondered why it seemed as if Mr. Brown was trying to care about her, and she supposed she should have had a little faith in him. The girl knocked on the half-open doors. Then she called out in Mr. Brown's voice, but no one answered her. She timidly opened the door. Standing on the threshold, she said that Luna had fallen asleep and it was time to return to the hospital. Having received no answer, Olivia entered the room. She began to walk along the tables. There was special equipment, laboratory glassware all around. On the table lay syringes, containers with lids, flasks, cylinders. She assumed that this was where Mr. Brown was developing the medicine. The man asked what she was doing there. Demian went out drying himself with a towel. The guest became embarrassed. She began to stutter and try to answer and explain something. Olivia was embarrassed. She didn't even look at the man's bare torso. Stuttering with awkwardness, she assured him that she had just come to say thank you for the evening with Luna. Damian put on his shirt and dried his hair. He said that he wanted to apologize for being so inconsiderate and not showing her the respect she deserved. The man sat down on the sofa. He also asked to forgive him, especially for trying to make Olivia shoot him. Demian insisted that he had a desire too. A strong one, no weaker than her desire to save her daughter. And when it didn't work, he lost his temper. The man said that after that he didn't know how to look Olivia in the eyes. That's why he didn't wake her up when he saw her sleeping under his office. Our heroine asked if it meant that Mr. Brown himself had carried her to her daughter's room that night. He had asked for forgiveness if he had offended her in any way. In her heart, the girl wanted to scream that everything was fine. But she restrained herself and blushed and kept silent. Olivia said that she had been looking for him herself, that she had practically demanded that her daughter be saved, that she understood her helplessness if Demian suddenly turned away from her. He assured her that he would never do such a thing. The man reminded that he signed a contract in order to continue seeing Olivia. Our heroine clenched her fists. She looked up at him timidly. She asked why Mr. Brown wanted to see her. Damian knew his words might sound strange. He claimed that he felt calm around Olivia, and he had never experienced that before. Our heroine thought with embarrassment that everything was the other way around for her. Her heart quickened its rhythm and pulsated in her ears. The girl didn't understand why her heart was beating in her chest like crazy when he was near. She knew it usually hurt, but now it felt quite the opposite. Olivia, embarrassed and slightly stuttering, admitted that she had experienced something similar on their first meeting. She said that she didn't usually kiss with men she saw for the first time. Demian assured that he also did not kiss the first women he met. Our heroine didn't believe him. The brunette asked in surprise why he had to lie about that. There was a pause. Both looked at each other with a serious face for a long time. Then Olivia laughed, and Mr. Brown, looking at her, also smiled. The girl laughed heartily, and Damian's heart beat faster in his chest. He thought sadly that he shouldn't have treated her like that, and that Olivia shouldn't get even more deeply entangled in his problems. Unable to resist, he began to straighten her hair and brush it away from her face. The girl blushed and became embarrassed. He began to forbid himself to act further, but he really wanted to. Both were holding onto the sofa with their hands. Both hands were close, but Demian's fingers were drawn to her hand as if by a magnet, and in a moment their faces came closer. Their lips were against hers. Their hearts beat in unison, but Demian managed to overcome himself. Mentally told himself that they shouldn't have done that, and at that moment when the girl was already ready to accept his kiss, he removed his hand and moved away a little further. Asked for forgiveness. Olivia was even confused. The girl said that she really couldn't understand him. First, Mr. Brown made her sign a contract to see him, and then suddenly he tore it up. Then he said he wasn't worth messing with, but he kept an eye on her anyway. Olivia clenched her fists in her lap. The girl couldn't understand what exactly Mr. Brown wanted from her. The brunette was doubtful, and then he said that she was right, and that his behavior really was hard to call normal. He admitted that he was extremely disrespectful, so much so that he had to apologize. Demian said with bitterness in his voice that he became a complete fool next to her, and he promised that it would never happen again. Our heroine turned to Mr. Brown. She just wanted to say that he just needed to be honest. There had been a time when she had thought Damian looked incredibly lonely. She thought that perhaps Mr. Brown simply didn't have someone he could completely trust, and that would explain his reserve and aloofness. Olivia believed that the man was simply hiding his feelings and pretending that everything was fine. He didn't seem like a bad person to the girl at all, and if it was difficult for him to open up to people, she assured him that he could be himself with her. Olivia reminded him that he himself said that he felt at ease around her. That's why she apologized for crossing the line. The girl was sure that she was in no position to say such things. Demian did not understand what she meant. She admitted that she herself could not collect her thoughts, and it was difficult to decide what was right, and could easily succumb to someone else's influence. Demian said that there was nothing wrong with that. After all, the girl was one of those who adhered exclusively to what she considered right, and she saw things through to the end, regardless of what others might think. Mr. Brown said if she felt uncomfortable, it was only because she was relentlessly pushing forward to find a cure for her daughter. And even under such difficult life circumstances, Olivia managed to maintain a kind heart and take care of the people around her. Even though Damien knew that if she was with him, she would be in danger, he didn't want to be separated. The girl smiled radiantly. She had no idea that Mr. Brown saw her like that. Damien's heart seemed ready to jump out of his chest. He suggested that Olivia just say that they were both complicated people and put things as they were. Her lips were intoxicatingly enticing. The brunette thought he couldn't hold back any longer. A second later, they were kissing each other. The girl put her arms around his neck. Olivia pulled his shirt down, exposing his torso. He covered her face and neck with kisses. Soon the girl was lying down, and the brunette was taking off his clothes. The bed creaked. They were both breathing heavily and often. Damien's kisses covered his partner's entire body. His hand slid down her thigh under the girl's clothes. In the silence of the night stood a 3-story building. All its windows were dark. A predatory animal with red eyes was devouring meat. Saliva was dripping from its mouth. Silos was angry that all the articles about the woman and Damien Brown were removed. He thought he was now certain that Damien had come to the cafe that time to pick her up. The screen showed a page search error. First there was Julia, and now this girl. There was a metallic ringing. The animal bared its teeth. Silos promised to kill Damien and every last member of the Brown family. Barking and howling were heard from all sides. Dozens of red eyes glowed in the darkness. The reporter's hands skillfully typed the draft text on the laptop keyboard. He thought that Tommy's death was just the beginning. And now 30 people in the city had disappeared. Max learned that all those people were orphans, homeless or lonely. He knew something strange was going on. Then his gaze fell on the smartphone, and he began to worry why Olivia hadn't called him yet. There was something that needed to be sorted out. Max felt he had to find out if Olivia was in danger because of her connection to Damien Brown. It was night. Penthouse. Here and there, isolated windows were lit in that building. The two were on the bed. They had close contact. The partner was half naked. Damien kissed her lips. He covered the girl's face and neck with caresses. And then, taking her by the knees, he turned her over onto her stomach. And he began to kiss the back of her neck and between her shoulder blades. The girl turned to Mr. Brown. The man continued to kiss Olivia passionately and asked her to call him by name. The partner intertwined his fingers with hers and squeezed them tightly. The brunette continued kissing her back. He simultaneously held her hands with intertwined fingers. The girl called him by name. Our heroine suddenly woke up in the middle of the night. She blinked sleepily, and with surprise she felt someone licking her. The girl looked in that direction with apprehension. A large predatory animal was lying at her feet and licking her feet. It was scary and a little ticklish at the same time. The creature's eyes glowed with an amber glow. To Olivia, it looked more like a wolf. The animal pushed off, jumped off the bed, and walked away, noticing the fear in Olivia's eyes. In the morning, when it was already light, our heroine woke up in bed. She sat up and thought. Then she looked at her feet. She breathed a sigh of relief. She convinced herself that it was just a bad dream. Olivia wondered why she had dreamed such a thing. She looked at the man sleeping next to her. However, she was still haunted by the fact that everything in that vision was so real. The girl grabbed her head. She blamed herself for what she had been thinking about just yesterday. And she asked herself how she could have ended up here in the same bed with Damien Brown. Here the sleepy man rolled over. He sleepily rubbed his eyes. Olivia was alarmed, and she hurried to lie down and pretend to be asleep. Damien, having finally woken up, sat up in bed. He glanced at the girl next to him. Her bare back was visible from under the blanket. After thinking for a bit, he covered her up more warmly. The device showed the time as early as 8. The alarm on the smartphone vibrated. The notes indicated that it was time for Luna's breakfast. Olivia hurried out of bed. She couldn't believe it was so late. Turning around, the girl noticed Damien. He was looking at her and at the same time holding a blanket in his hands. They met each other with their eyes. They couldn't tear themselves away from each other for a long time, as if reading each other's thoughts. Feeling awkward, the man turned away, and Olivia began tapping on the touch buttons of her phone. Damien, overcoming his awkwardness, called out the girl's name and asked if she had slept well. Our heroine paused. She remembered how her partner had asked her to call him by his name that night. A blush covered her cheeks. The brunette himself was embarrassed that he had called her Olivia without even realizing it. The girl replied that now was not the time to do that. She planned to go to Luna. Their things were scattered on the floor from the evening. Olivia sat with the blanket over her. She asked if he could lend her some comfortable clothes. Sometime later, 3 people were sitting at the dining room table in Mr. Brown's penthouse having breakfast. Our heroine felt awkward. She sat with her eyes down on her plate and methodically cut off pieces of meat. Luna said that she was already finished. Olivia noticed to herself that after everything that had happened last night, Damien didn't look embarrassed. The girl continued cutting the steak, and she thought to herself that maybe she had been wrong to attach too much importance to this. Olivia poked her fork into the meat, mentally reassuring herself that they were just caught up in the moment. Luna took her by the cheeks and asked if her mother was sick, that her whole face was burning. Her mother assured her that she was fine, and the girl started pinching Olivia's cheeks. Luna then pouted and said that she herself was not fine. After all, she said she was full, but her mother continued to feed her. Olivia's head was splitting. She asked her daughter for forgiveness and reminded her to take her medicine. A second later, the girl had already gotten up from the table and was climbing up the steps. And Damien himself thought about the need for him to take medicine too. And he began to roll up the sleeve on his left arm. Mr. Brown opened the box. He wondered where this lightness came from. After all, taking the medicine was enough to make him feel almost embarrassedly. And he wondered if he felt so good because of the night he spent with Olivia. Damien decided it was too early to draw a conclusion. He took the pill. After all, no one knew what could happen if you missed a dose. But Mr. Brown was certain of one thing. He didn't want to let Olivia go. The girl brought him out of his thoughts. She asked if Mr. was sick. Damien even involuntarily shuddered in surprise. Luna asked if he had the same unknown disease as she did. The man remained silent. Then he hid the tube in his breast pocket. He said that she was right. And now, from childhood, there was a need to take pills. Damien told the girl that he couldn't go on long trips because of this. And he wasn't interested in playing with his friends, because as a child, often stayed home. Luna slouched sadly. She said she always wanted to go to an amusement park. Damien suddenly had what seemed to him a brilliant idea. He suggested that the girl make a promise to each other. Olivia was going down the stairs. She heard Mr. Brown and her daughter whispering. Surprise turned to indignation, and then to curiosity. Luna nodded her head, smiling. Then, as a sign of agreement and to seal the promise, their little fingers were crossed. The girl reminded him that Mr. Brown had promised her. Our heroine couldn't help but ask what they were talking about. The daughter blushed and closed her eyes. She said that it was a secret, and pointedly raised her index finger. Damien's face expressed solidarity and pleasure. Our heroine even whistled. The bell rang. The elevator doors slid open. Heels clicked on the floor. Someone rang the doorbell. All 3 turned towards the sound. The guest was quietly talking about something with Mr. Brown, standing to the side. Olivia and her daughter remained on the sofa. Our heroine lowered her head, feeling a little sad. And she thought to herself, who was this person? The girl was stylishly dressed. It seemed that she was quite close to Mr. Damien. But then Olivia caught herself. What she was doing. She shook her head, driving the thoughts away. She asked herself mentally, what was wrong with the fact that they were close? She suggested that Luna return to the hospital. The girl raised an uncomprehending and offended look at her mother. She replied that she did not want to leave here. Here Damien called the girl to him for a minute, and said that since she would be living in the penthouse for some time, then she might need quite a few things. So he called Sarah for help. Olivia stood up. She wanted to clarify. After all, she thought that Luna was supposed to return to the ward today. Damien denied it. He thought to himself that the scandal had not yet been settled. He assured that Sarah would provide significant assistance. Olivia answered dryly that she was fine on her own. The interlocutor recalled her words that she didn't even take anything to change into. The brunette asked if Olivia minded going with her to the fitting room. After all, first it was necessary to take measurements. Our heroine silently passed by Damien. He said goodbye until the evening, not understanding the reason for such a sharp change in her mood. Soon, in front of a huge mirror more than human height, Sarah was taking measurements from Mrs. Moore's body with a tape. The brunette asked our heroine if she had met Damien. Olivia asked again with a hint of indignation in her voice. She assured that everything was not so. The guest specified what kind of relationship the girl had with Mr. Brown at that time. Olivia said that she was just acquainted with him. The brunette assured that the girl had already gone beyond the bounds of acquaintances, and she noted to herself that she was already completely permeated with Damien's disgusting smell. She said that their close relationship was clearly noticeable. Sarah took the blonde by the shoulder. She said that she did not understand the obvious. After all, what kind of guy would ask a girl to buy clothes for a woman who wore his clothes? The girl lowered her glasses and apologized for being late with the greeting. She said that she was Damien's cousin, Sarah Brown. Our heroine made a conclusion for herself, that she had misunderstood everything. And the guest asked why Olivia decided that there was nothing between her and Damien. Mrs. Moore said she had never been on a date with Damien. The brunette assured her that her cousin acted tough but was rather naive. Sarah typed something on the touch keyboard of her smartphone. He said that he had already given her the measurements. 4 cars were soon pulling into the underground parking of Mr. Brown's penthouse. Assistants carried in portable wardrobes on supports, with new clothes on hangers. Model-looking girls began to dress in the clothes they had brought. They sorted out accessories, and then they held a demonstration. Our heroine gasped, admitting to herself that she had seen these models in magazines. Sarah asked if she had a favorite clothing brand. Olivia hesitated a little and answered negatively. She thought that each of these things cost more than her annual rent for the apartment. Sarah showed the model on the tablet screen. She asked if the girl liked this style. "Beautiful," our heroine answered. Showing the photo, the brunette told her assistant to try it on. The girl accepted the meme's order. The models began to come out dressed in their chosen outfits. One blonde came out in a light jacket skirt suit. When Sarah asked to push harder, a brunette in a blouse and light skirt came out, carrying a handbag in her hands. After a while, Olivia and her daughter were standing in front of a mountain of boxes with new clothes. Sarah couldn't believe that the girl would buy all this, and taking Mrs. Moore by the hand, she said that she was a bigger spendthrift than one could imagine. And Olivia admitted that she had no idea. What was considered beautiful meant a decision to buy. Sarah said that her cousin had given orders to buy everything that Mrs. Moore liked. Our heroine thought that she now felt even more guilty before Mr. Damien. It was late evening. The lights in the windows were shining. Mr. Brown was walking down the corridor accompanied by Russell's assistant. Suddenly, Damien's phone vibrated. He looked at the device's screen. It meant that Sarah Brown was online. His cousin had sent him a photo of Mrs. Moore in her new outfit. The next photo showed the happy faces of Olivia and her little daughter. Damien couldn't help but smile when he saw them. Russell asked the boss, what was so funny about it? He was surprised that Mr. Brown had been staring at his phone all day. But then he saw Olivia and was stunned. Our heroine, smiling modestly, welcomed Mr. Brown back. Our heroine was a little embarrassed. She claimed that she had never worn anything like this before, and now she felt a little awkward. The girl asked if it didn't look strange. Damien was silent, thinking about something of his own. Olivia called out to Mr. Brown. He even flinched slightly, asked for forgiveness, and he said that the girl looked simply magnificent. He chuckled and assured her that such clothes suited her very well. The girl thanked him shyly, and Damien noticed a delightful aroma, and his face also flushed a little. He noticed that Olivia no longer smelled like Julia. He wondered if it had started after that night or before. Our heroine announced her intention to go and change. Damien asked her to stop and wait. He suggested going for a little walk for the 3 of them. The girl asked again in surprise, because she thought she shouldn't have left the penthouse. Mr. Brown agreed she was right, but he was sorry to miss the opportunity of taking a walk when Olivia was so delightfully dressed. His blush betrayed his embarrassment, and our heroine herself also blushed from his compliments. Damien continued to make arguments that at that hour there were few reporters, and it was possible to reserve a place so as not to worry. Here Luna joined the adults' conversation. With excitement in her eyes, she suggested going to an amusement park. Olivia told her daughter that it was too late for her to go for a walk. She reminded her that baby time was almost over. The little one started to act up. Luna wanted to dress up as a princess and go on an amusement park ride. Mr. Brown promised to find a park to rent that evening. Olivia reminded the doctor of the advice to avoid such places. The man reassured that the doctor would be nearby. Luna continued to beg her mother. Damien said that he had made a promise to the girl earlier, so now he was going to keep it. Our heroine ran out of arguments and was forced to agree. The park was empty, but the rides were ready to entertain their visitors. Everything was lit up with bright lights. One of them caught the eye of a little girl, and she immediately went there, accompanied by her mother. Olivia followed her daughter. She thought it was quite typical of Mr. Brown to rent out an entire amusement park for them. Meanwhile, the girl was already sitting down to go for a ride. Her mother asked her what she and Mr. Brown had promised each other. Luna assured him that she told him about the illness that prevented her from seeing her friends and going for walks, and he promised to take her to an amusement park. The girl said that in exchange for Mr. Brown, she promised to listen to the doctor's recommendations. Our heroine now understood everything. She looked at Damien. She walked up to him with a wide step and called him to join the general fun. The man asked again in surprise. Olivia took his hand and asked in return if there was anyone else here. The girl assumed that Mr. Brown was bored standing all alone. Soon the three were spinning in one booth. The girl and her mother were laughing, and only Damien was gloomy and overly tense. There was a moment when the man also tried to relax a little and join in the fun, but his face suddenly turned green. And when we were leaving the ride, he even felt strange, unpleasant sensations in his head. Only then did Olivia notice that Mr. Brown looked a bit unwell. He assured her that he was fine, and at that time the doctor auscultated Luna. Everything was fine with the girl. Damien thought that all those smells made him feel a little nauseous, and our heroine concluded that he didn't tolerate rides well. Olivia handed him a handkerchief. She offered him to wipe his face to feel better. He thanked her restrainedly. Damien expressed regret about this morning. Then the girl looked upset and he just went to work. Our heroine knew that it wasn't Damien's fault. It was Olivia herself who misunderstood his relationship with Sarah. Luna ran towards her mother along the tiled path of the amusement park. The baby was immediately hugged upon close contact. Olivia was worried about what had happened to her. She asked the doctor about it. The young man in the white coat assured her that everything was fine, but the girl needed to take a break. Luna whined that she wanted to play some more. Mom promised her that there would be another chance, and suggested that they look around and find something fun. Here Damien intervened in the conversation. He pointed with his hand in the direction and suggested going to the game room. The first place they went was a children's shooting gallery. Balls of different colors were placed in cells. Prizes for skilled participants were located on shelves nearby. Mr. Brown took it upon himself to teach the girl how to hit the target. He showed her how to take the dart and how to aim at the ball. Their combined efforts made the throw. Luna even closed her eyes. There was a loud bang. When the girl opened her eyes, the dart she had thrown was lying in the cell next to the red pieces of the balloon. Joy overwhelmed the participants. The little girl rushed to hug Mr. Damien. She was jumping with delight, and the man was encouraging her. Luna insisted that Mom had to try too. After all, one more hit and they could win a soft plush toy. Olivia began to insist that she wasn't very good at it. The brunette handed her the dart. Damien asked her to take it. The eye contact seemed to enchant them both. The hour stopped. A little later, Olivia began trying to aim the dart. She told herself that she should have just thrown it. Damien showed her how to take it correctly, and assured her that it would be easier to quit. The girl agreed to try it. The werewolf noted to himself that he again felt the girl's unusual scent. The events are transferred to the gateway of the city's disadvantaged neighborhoods. The houses were all alike, and the streets were dirty. There was a bloody trail on one of them. Someone was calling for help in a broken voice. He was being dragged along the ground. The guy was sitting on the road and was shaking all over. I asked if there was anyone nearby. A predatory animal like a wolf was looking at him. The predator made one leap and bit the poor guy on the neck. Blood from the carotid arteries spurted in all directions. The werewolf's blue eyes looked at the victim with the cold and indifferent gaze of distant stars. The man gritted his teeth and tried to clamp down on the bleeding, fatal wound on his neck. The werewolf stood over his victim for a long time while he struggled in his death throes. And next to the pool of blood of that dead man, a reporter's badge with the publication's name and his personal photograph fell. The car drove up to the house. All the windows were already turned off. It seemed that all the residents were already asleep. Damien assumed that the girl was very tired. The baby was sleeping in his arms. This did not surprise Luna's mother, considering how many times she rode the carousel. Olivia looked at Mr. Brown and began to giggle quietly. Still laughing, she asked him if he was going to take off his headband with ears. He replied softly that Luna had insisted that he not take it off. The girl was surprised that Damien took some things too seriously. The man asked Olivia if she would lend him a helping hand in that case. He leaned on her shoulder. He said that his hands were busy at the moment. Our heroine took the hoop with ears off Mr. Brown's head. He looked intently at Olivia. The girl thanked Damien for what he did today, including shopping. She smiled and said that she had not seen her daughter so happy in a long time. Mr. Brown smelled her again. It seemed that he finally realized that Olivia's abilities were manifested through the scent that the girl exuded when she was in a good mood. And he thought that nothing had worked out that time precisely because he had tried to provoke the manifestation of abilities against her will. And the girl was not in the best of spirits. Mr. Brown thought that this information would be useful to the developers of the new drug. He took his smartphone out of his inside pocket. He was going to report his findings to the research director. And Olivia, all rosy, smiled slightly, either shyly or slyly, and she held a hoop ears in her hands. Mr. Brown admired her. He decided that the call could wait until tomorrow. And in continuation of his decision, he put the device back in his pocket. Right now, Damien chose not to spoil the mood. He simply stood next to the seemingly happy girl. It was a fine day. The blue sky was covered with light clouds here and there. The morning in the penthouse was just beginning. Minson sat at a richly laid table, her emotions a mixture of surprise and delight. The friend suggested that we help ourselves but not to rush. After all, the food from this table will not go anywhere. The girl, judging by the way Olivia spoke and looked, concluded that it was as if she was the owner of this place. Minson asked if nothing had really happened between them and Mr. Damien. Olivia's answer was vague. Her face flushed, and the girl herself looked down. The friend said that she knew it, and was glad that she was right. She immediately asked if they had met. Our heroine said that she would simply live here for a while because of the scandal, and as soon as everything died down, she would immediately move out. Minson made a sad face. I asked my friend what she was talking about. My friend said that all the articles had recently been deleted, and there hadn't been much news about Mr. Brown's company lately. Olivia was surprised because Damien said it was early. Minson guessed why he said that. He wanted Olivia to be with him. Maybe the girl would not get involved in a mess for the sake of a person she did not care about. There were signature dishes from the star chef made from the freshest ingredients. Fills the closet with branded clothes after trying them on. Rents a park for the whole night. Olivia asked not to continue, assuring that she understood everything. She began to look at the photo taken that evening at the amusement park. Our heroine was suddenly flooded with memories of that evening. How Mr. Brown, at her request, showed a photo of himself with a happy face on the screen. The girl typed a message to Damien, asking when he would return home. She assured him that she wanted to ask him about something. He wrote back almost immediately, "I'll be there right now." Olivia was surprised by this answer. Damien stood on the threshold with a bag in his hands. The girl asked if he had gone to work. He confirmed this fact. Mr. Brown said he came back because he realized that Olivia wanted to talk to him about something. And he asked what exactly. The girl assured him that he shouldn't have come back. Moreover, the question wasn't that important. Damien assured that he didn't know about it until he came here. Olivia said the rumors had died down, and if that was true, she thought it would be better for her to move out. Mr. Brown asked if there was anything that made her feel uncomfortable. He seemed nervous and worried. The girl answered vaguely. Then Damien asked why she didn't stay here for the sake of Luna. Olivia asked him what he meant. He replied that reporters were still hunting for material for the story. Paparazzi were watching the hospital, the company, and the penthouse. He thought it would be difficult to take care of Luna, given the travel to and from the hospital. Mrs. Moore assured him that she was worried that she would cause inconvenience if she continued to stay there. Damien replied that it was no inconvenience to him. He said that Olivia and her daughter's presence made his life in the penthouse a little more pleasant. When asked why, Damien himself did not know the answer. After thinking for a moment, he assumed that he was simply comfortable being around Olivia. The girl even blushed from embarrassment. The girl summed up that since it was difficult for Damien to open up to people, she assured that he could be himself with her. Olivia assured him that since Mr. Brown felt at ease around him, she could stay here for a little while longer. She thanked him sincerely. The man offered to bring something here from her house. He promised to take care of everything if she gave him the keys. Olivia walked into the penthouse and couldn't believe her eyes. She asked herself how this could happen. The bed, the sofa, the table, and even the children's toys were all arranged in Mr. Brown's penthouse. Luna was glad that their entire home was here. Then Damien came in. He said he had asked someone to move their things this morning. Olivia didn't think it was worth bringing all the furniture as well. The man assured her that she could be needed too, and he also wanted her to get used to the penthouse. Damien asked her to feel at home. Our heroine. She wasn't particularly happy. She didn't know if it was normal to receive so many compliments. After all, she already felt guilty for agreeing to stay here longer. The girl suddenly remembered Minson's words. That Mr. Brown wanted her to be with him. But now what her friend said didn't help. Demian saw the girl's condition. He asked what was wrong. She shook her head. She answered with a slight stutter, "Nothing." Then Olivia's smartphone rang in her pocket. Taking the device in her hands, she saw that it was Max calling. Our heroine took the call. She greeted her friend. Standard phrases and questions followed. The friend was extremely worried. He assured that Olivia should call the police. Max said that he heard loud noises coming from her apartment this morning. So he went in. And it turned out that someone had broken in and taken everything, even the furniture. The girl sighed and said that Demian had moved her and her daughter's things. The friend asked why that was necessary. Olivia said that even though the scandal had died down, they were still being watched. That's why they decided to stay here until Luna's test results came back. Max thought, leaning against the frame. Was it true that Mr. Brown just wanted to help the girl with her sick daughter? A friend asked Olivia on the phone if she had a free minute. He suggested meeting somewhere nearby. Looking at Demian, the girl asked when. Max was proposing now. After all, they hadn't had a normal conversation since that day, and he wanted to give her something. The girl agreed, promising, "Write the time and place," and she thought to herself that she hadn't spoken to her friend since she had run out of the hospital. That's why she wanted to apologize when they met. Olivia began to explain herself to Mr. Brown, hesitating a little. She knew she shouldn't go outside. He interrupted her and told her to go. Demian assured her that he wanted to give her a ride. The girl gasped in surprise and thanked him absent-mindedly. The brunette threw over his shoulder to the assistant who was going to give Olivia a ride, and it was raining outside. There was a black car parked under the house. Large drops of rain pounded the body of Mr. Brown's car. He wondered if it was a short-lived downpour. And suddenly I remembered that on that evening of my first meeting with Olivia, it was also raining heavily, and if the girl hadn't saved him, it would have been hard to even imagine the consequences. After all, he could have lost control of himself and caused such a disaster. Demian realized that he had really been on the edge then. It turned out that the girl had saved him so many times already, and it was, without exaggeration, a real miracle. And perhaps that was why Mr. Brown couldn't stop thinking about her. It was to the point that he would become furious at the very thought of her not being with him. The brunette looked through two windows, his car and the cafe building. He rhythmically tapped his knuckles, watching Olivia and thinking about her. Here Demian suddenly realized that the girl had forgotten to take an umbrella with her, and he decided to take it to her before the rain got stronger. But suddenly Mr. Brown's attention was drawn to a red-haired guy. Max was walking with a small paper bag in his hands, heading towards the entrance of the establishment. The cafe was empty at that time. The guy sat down at a table by the window with his girlfriend who was waiting for him. He complimented her. Olivia blushed shyly and thanked him, her green eyes sparkling. She suddenly looked down at her coffee cup. She felt awkward. And she realized that after everything that had happened, things would never be the same again. The girl asked Max for forgiveness for leaving the room like that. After all, her friend had paid a visit out of concern for her. The guy was calming Olivia down. After all, so much had happened in such a short time. And then there was the scandalous article published under his name. Max asked his interlocutor how she got here. He assumed that she took a taxi. The girl hesitated a little, but after smiling slightly, she replied that Demian had given her a ride. It was he who had recommended this cafe for meeting a friend, and now he was waiting for her outside in the car. The reporter's face visibly tightened at what he heard. He asked if Mr. Brown was there to keep an eye on her. Olivia clarified what the friend meant by keep an eye on her. The friend said that since she had been unable to leave the penthouse, he suspected that Mr. Brown had been threatening her. Our heroine replied that she had decided to stay longer herself, because she did not consider it safe to return. She assured him that Mr. Brown had indeed been kind to her and Luna. Her eyes showed sincerity and gratitude. Max thought he must have a reason to treat Olivia so well. He believed that the man was not the type to act without benefit to himself, and he was sure that Mr. Demian had bad intentions. Our heroine thought to herself how Max could so easily accuse of something like that. After all, her friend barely knew Mr. Brown. She replied that she appreciated her friend's concern, but she wasn't sure that he knew Demian well. Olivia tried to explain that Mr. Brown had been a great help to her, and so she was grateful. Max admitted that she was right. After all, if you look at the situation from the other side, Mr. Brown, by allowing them to stay, saved them and Luna. The girl asked her friend how he was doing. He told her that he was still sorting out Tommy's case, and so far nothing was clear about it. The guy wanted to organize a funeral for his friend, but he couldn't. Tommy's body disappeared from the morgue. He slammed his fist on the table from extreme emotions. Our heroine asked to let her know if Max did this. A friend asked if she would come. Olivia confirmed. After all, the guy supported her when, as a mother, she was worried about Luna's illness. The reporter sadly assumed that their relationship had degenerated into a simple exchange of pleasantries. Max smiled broadly. Thanked for the kind words, was already suggesting to go. Olivia, getting up from the table, suddenly remembered that her friend wanted to give her something. It turned out to be several things that were left at the hospital. The guy handed her a paper bag. He admitted that it was just an excuse to see her. Max and Olivia were standing on the threshold of the establishment, having already left. The friends were still chatting cheerfully about something before they finished. The guy asked her to stand here and wait while he bought an umbrella and quickly returned here. She replied that it was not necessary to do so. She assumed that the rain was short-lived. But then an open black umbrella appeared above our heroine's head. Looking back, she saw Demian. Mr. Brown looked confused and embarrassed. He asked if the girl had finished her meeting with her friend. And then, looking at the guy with a challenge in his voice, he greeted him. Max answered him with a restrained answer. The friend said goodbye to Olivia, promising to see her later. The girl promised to stay in touch with him, and so they parted ways. Damien held the umbrella over Mrs. Moore, and her friend, with his head down, walked away. Olivia, too, became sad. Mr. Brown noticed that the girl looked unwell, and he asked if that journalist was talking nonsense again. She denied it, assuring that everything was not so. Olivia apologized for keeping him waiting. She offered to go home, but he wanted to take advantage of the opportunity and change the scenery. And he suggested going somewhere. Our heroine asked herself why Demian cared about her so much, and I wondered what he was thinking. Olivia said that there was actually one place, and they went straight there. All the windows of that establishment were lit, but there was not a single customer inside. Olivia's hands were in gloves. She was assembling a sandwich. Mr. Brown was nearby and offered to help. The girl politely declined. She assured him that she was almost finished. Demian stated that in that case he intended to just stand nearby. He asked how long Olivia had worked there. The girl replied that it had been about 5 years, and she added that she had met Minson there. Moon Dance was like a second home for him and Luna. Demian couldn't understand why she brought him here. The girl assured that she felt comfortable here. She assured him that she wanted to talk. She reminded him of the conversation at Demian's house. She said that she would understand if it was not easy for him to answer her questions. Mr. Brown said it was the day he met her for the first time by a twist of fate. He had a splitting headache and had taken too many painkillers. Demian said that without the medicine, his mind was clouded and he ended up in an unfamiliar alley. And then he got into a fight with some thugs and was shot by them. He assumed that he had mistakenly called the girl Julia because he was seriously injured and delirious. Demian said that it was the woman he loved. However, she was no longer in this world. Our heroine herself became sad. She didn't know that Demian was experiencing the same pain as she was. Mr. Brown said he had disappeared only because he could not trust the stranger. And there was also the risk that she would tell the press about his condition. The brunette now knew that Olivia would not have done that. He asked if he had answered all her questions. Olivia answered in the affirmative, and thanked him for his honesty. And she thought that thanks to such conversations it was possible to gradually get to know each other. The girl said that the burgers were ready and all that was left was to add the sauce. Demian asked to let him, and noticing a tube nearby, began to season the dish with its contents. Olivia watched him with a condescending smile, noticing some clumsiness. The man, due to his inexperience, pressed the tip of the tube against the surface of the bun and began to press hard on it. The sauce splattered to the side and landed on Olivia's clothes. She screamed in surprise. Demian got excited and grabbed the girl by the shoulders. He asked if everything was okay with her. She smiled and assured him that she was okay. But then a sound caught their attention. Something was either knocking or clicking. The source was in the warehouse. Demian thought that if there was a person there, then everything was fine. But he suspected that it could have been a wolf, or Silas, which would be even worse. The man pulled Olivia behind him, covering her entirely with his body. Something was creaking threateningly behind the door. Then the doors opened and a bearded man, no longer young, appeared on the threshold. It was Olivia's former boss. Seeing the brunette, he dropped his load noisily to the floor and hurried to grab the stranger by the collar with a strong hand. Our heroine was horrified, and her boss asked with fury in his voice whether Olivia's cheating husband was in front of him. Our heroine immediately rushed to help Mr. Brown and began to assure the boss that he had misunderstood everything. The brunette grabbed the girl by the hand. In a commanding tone, he told her to stand next to him, and Demian demanded that the stranger let him go first. Olivia's boss just grinned at the impudent fellow. He asked if he had forgotten about his sick daughter. The girl said that her husband was no longer in this world. The speaker's face suddenly became haggard. Olivia continued that her husband had died before Luna was born. Our heroine lowered her head, and in a sad voice said that it was not easy to talk about it. That is why she did not tell anyone about it. The boss assured that he understood everything, and expressed his regrets to Olivia. He assumed how hard it was for the girl, and Mr. Brown thought that he had no idea what a loss this fragile and kind girl had experienced. The boss finally let the unfamiliar brunette go, but he persistently asked who he was then. Then Olivia, smiling broadly, introduced him as her landlord. The man himself asked in surprise. Our heroine took Demian aside, reminded him that she really did live in his penthouse. He asked if it was possible to imagine it any other way, and the owner of the establishment watched the couple from the side. He thought that he had already seen something like this in some movie. The boss's imagination immediately conjured up a movie-like picture of a love story between a landlord and a tenant. The man said that since the boy was a landlord, he must have been quite wealthy. Demian dryly confirmed this fact. The chief took Demian by the shoulders. He asked if he could trust Olivia to him in that case. The girl was indignant. Mr. Brown assured that he wouldn't hurt the girl. The boss laughed and said that he liked this guy. After all, he didn't beat around the bush, and he asked Olivia where she found him. The former employee denied that he was her boyfriend. The girl changed the subject and asked why the cafe was closed. The boss replied that some of the customers had gotten into a fight and broken a window. The owner of the establishment began to swear at the idiots from the company. He threatened to deal with them when he met them. Olivia was only amused by his emotions. Demian said that if there were no objections, he was ready to replace the window. The boss said that he simply could not refuse such a pleasant offer. The owner of the cafe suddenly remembered that he had recently baked a cheesecake. He knew that Luna simply adored such a dish, and he went to pack the dessert for the girl. Soon our heroine was left alone with Demian, and she was glad that her former boss did not see that news and did not recognize them on the screen. The brunette still couldn't understand why Olivia introduced him as the landlord. The girl admitted that she couldn't think of any other way to describe their relationship. Demian assured that their relationship could be called more than just acquaintances. The interlocutor blushed shyly but agreed. Then the phone rang. Mr. Brown looked at the device and saw the name of the caller. It was Russell. After a while, Demian walked towards his assistant. He didn't understand what was so urgent, and why they were here at all. Russell asked in a cold tone what Mr. Brown was going to do with the woman. The brunette assured that he had offered Olivia to stay in his penthouse. The assistant sighed, and then asked if Demian really wanted to develop a new drug. The chief asked if Russell had brought him here to ask about this. He reminded him that he had already discussed this issue with the research director. The assistant said that now was not the right time to flirt with Olivia. He admitted that he accidentally overheard their conversation, that Demian felt comfortable around her, and urged her to see what happened while he was having fun with a human woman. Soon the guys approached the place, which was covered with a barrier tape. A police team was already working there. The boys in uniform touched the peak of their hats and politely greeted Mr. Brown. They looked normal on the outside, except that the police officers' eyes were amber, which made them look like werewolves. Demian, accompanied by his assistant, came closer. The policeman lifted the tape, letting them through to the scene. Mr. Brown immediately smelled the scent of human blood. Soon in the darkness, he saw the body of a man in a light shirt lying on the road. The policeman assured that the victim was already dead when he was found, and judging by the shape of the wound in the area of the carotid artery, these were definitely traces of wolf teeth. Another guy in uniform reported that over the past few days there have been periodic calls about bodies torn apart by wild animals. But the patrolman found this before the locals. Demian summed up that this was not the first case. And Russell noticed the victim's badge next to the body. It turned out that the guy was an employee of their company. Mr. Brown wondered if a victim from his company had been deliberately chosen. And if so, who it was and why. All werewolves living in the human world were connected to a certain family. In exchange for the patronage of the head of the family, they received medicine. There were several individuals living separately, but all of them would never dare to attack a person. After all, having revealed their identity, could be in big trouble. Given all this, Demian assumed that Silas might have been behind the murders. Russell relayed what the research director had said, that the drug was made from aconite, which kills werewolves. Thus, the longer you take it, the more poison accumulates in the body. Over time, the disease progressed, and the body, on the verge of death, triggered wolf instincts. The assistant reminded that Demian was in exactly the same critical condition before meeting that woman. He reminded them that the others were also at their limit, and soon their bodies could not take it, so they had to develop a new drug as soon as possible. He believed it had to be done, even if it meant using Olivia Moore to do it. Demian assured that he could not conduct the experiment without informing the girl, and he was not ready to deceive. The assistant grabbed him by the shoulders and began shaking him. He screamed that it was not the right time to worry about her. I asked if the chief didn't know what could happen when people found out about the existence of werewolves. It could be the beginning of a hunt, and if Demian didn't do this, then the assistant himself would take the girl to the research director. He assured that he did not need permission to make an effective drug. And taking the boss by the shoulder, he said that he had already deceived Olivia. Russell was sure that the leader would continue in the same spirit. He asked if Demian really wanted to go through the torture again. Mr. Brown clenched his fist. Sighing, he asked the assistant to let him go, assuring him that he understood everything. He turned to the police and gave orders to buy a place in the nearest morgue to store the body, and to let them know if there was anything suspicious. And Russell was given the order to call the heads of families and ask them to find out who refused to use the medicine. After all, there were those who missed taking the drug and got into trouble. The assistant said that even if it was their doing, a new drug was still needed, and Demian knew it. An abandoned, lonely house on the outskirts of the city. All the windows were dark. It seemed that the residents had left long ago. Two wolves growled at each other. Saliva dripped from their bared jaws. A guttural roar was heard. One of the bigger ones made a dash, pushing off from the floor surface, and soon took a position on top of his brother. Their red eyes glowed in the darkness. Soon the jaw closed on the neck of one of them. A plaintive whine was heard. Silos barked at the werewolves to stop, holding an open bottle of strong alcoholic drink in his hands. He said that the winner had been determined. The wolves continued to fight. The guy shouted at them again, louder. The bearded man stood behind him, said it was a stupid and useless argument. It seemed the werewolves were not listening to Silos. The blonde was furious. He accused his interlocutor of wishful thinking. Silas shouted that he was the alpha, and that under his command, there were 30 werewolves. He thought he could easily handle the drugged Damian Brown. The bearded man asked him to come to his senses, because the betas couldn't be controlled. They were just a bunch of losers who couldn't beat the Browns. Silos asked what he proposed to do in that case, and he squeezed the bottle so hard that holes appeared from his fingers. He said that Demian could probably suspect something, and now a meeting of the heads of families was scheduled. But that was what they had planned. The bearded man advised to force those who would try to check on Damian's condition and attack him to switch sides. But Silos didn't know how to convince the stubborn old men. The interlocutor believed that the guy just needed to show them who the real alpha was. The blonde thought about it. He liked the idea. He even smiled at himself, and he said with a grin that the most interesting part would finally begin. Meanwhile, Mr. Brown walked down the hallway of the penthouse. He mentally reassured himself that Olivia would get home safely. The girl had to be left in the cafe. Demian was surprised to see the open door of his home. He warned of his arrival, quietly knocked on the door with his knuckles. He called the girl by name. She was surprised by his return. She seemed to be thinking about something. The man asked why Olivia wasn't asleep yet. The girl answered something abstract. Demian saw the TV on. He asked what she was watching. They were cartoons for Luna, but the girl had already fallen asleep to them. The girl said that she left him a piece of cheesecake from the chef. She asked if Damian wanted to try dessert, but he was sad and thoughtful. I remembered Russell's fierce conviction and his reminder of going through torment. Olivia saw the man's condition and became worried about what was wrong, and asked what had happened to him. Damian referred to fatigue and a headache. The girl suggested that he lie down and rest in that case. The man analyzed. He took his medicine before returning home, and Olivia now was hardly in a good mood. The question arose as to why he had not experienced any side effects. Demian asked the girl to tell him what she was feeling now. Olivia admitted that she couldn't sleep because she was worried about him. It was just that Mr. Brown had suddenly left somewhere at night. And besides, she wanted to eat cheesecake with Damian. There was dessert on the table. A small part of it had already been cut off. The brunette concluded that Olivia's abilities manifested themselves not only when she was in a good mood, but also when she was worried about him. Demian took the girl by the shoulder, asked if she was upset. The answer was that she assumed that he had urgent business. Mr. Brown leaned over the fragile and kind girl sitting on the sofa. He asked if she was worried about him. Olivia recalled that he asked an assistant to walk her home, although there was no need for him to do so. The man was surprised. He touched Olivia's rosy cheek tenderly. He didn't know what to do next.